Well, hello there to all the good people of Ohio and beyond. This is Aaron Knapp, and you're tuned into Unplugged, broadcasting without permission. This is a place where the truth gets louder and we dig deeper, and where we always remember be lawful, not awful. If you want the full stories, the documents, the videos, and everything they don't want you to see, head on over to AaronKnappUnplugged.com, my new home for every investigation, every episode, and every update. And while you're here, be sure to like the video, follow the page, and hit subscribe, and share this with someone who needs the truth. We're building something real here. We're building something fearless, and we're doing it together. Welcome to Unplugged. Let's kick this thing off.
Plug with Knapp. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Knapp. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Knapp. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script.
Oh boy. Sorry about that. Didn't have the mic over there. Good evening there, Lorain, Ohio, Lorain County, and beyond Ohio. Any of the First or Second Amendment audit pages out there that I shared this with, if you happen to be here, you're in for a special treat tonight. We're going to discuss a lot of things tonight here. I know everyone's going to be all excited to discuss what happened on Monday night. Well, they didn't get their perp walk. That's all I know. And in discussing that with one of my friends, I said, he's like, I probably would have taken the perp walk. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I kind of wanted to, but kind of didn't because, I don't really like jail. I don't want to go there. It seems like a very uncomfortable place to be. And so I'd rather not go there. So I'm just happy they gave me exactly what I needed, right? Like, they completely gave me what I needed before I even got in the door, which is amazing. But that's what tonight's episode is going to be all about, right? Tonight's episode is all about what happened over at City Hall on Monday night. And I'm going to do something a little different tonight. Instead of playing ads in between, when I get to my little break sections, I'm going to play the videos from what occurred at City Hall where they violated my civil rights. And understand this. I get it, okay? Everybody's out there. Oh, you're a pest. You're harassing. You're doing this. Listen, folks. No, I'm not. Am I going to end up probably getting some settlements out of this? Yes. But that's not for, a lack of trying to offer something better. I offered in the beginning a handshake. At one point, the number just keeps going up because they want to fight. It's not because they think they're right or wrong. It's because they don't want to lose to Aaron. They need a win. They need it so bad. Every time they even get remotely close to a win, like tonight, they write this big flourishing letter. Oh, and the gun law. Listen, folks, they just need a win against Aaron. Honestly, I'd like to give them one. It's just not going to be this one because you're not going to ban me from City Hall. It's ridiculous. And could I have gone further? Yes. But I didn't need to. You can't ban me from a public forum, especially when you haven't charged me with a crime. And that's going to bring us to the start of tonight's episode, which is when the door closes and the crowd laughs. Now, I get it, right? Like, I just want to say, let me tell you what Monday night really was, okay? Because it was not a scene. It was not a stunt. It was not a viral moment for the entertainment of the comment section. Last night was a government doorway being used like a courtroom, with no judge inside, no charges on file, and no due process on the record. Just police authority standing in formation to enforce a piece of paper as if it were law. I mean, let that sink in. That's all it was, a piece of paper written by a piece of shit. So, I mean, a couple of pieces, right? You got a piece of paper written by a piece of shit in Tim Williams. I will address this much. I know in a recent communication there was something that was said by somebody, and I'm just going to say this. No matter who you are, race or any of that stuff should never come into play. And I disagree with anything of that nature. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I will call him a piece of shit because I do think Tim Williams is a piece of shit because he violated my civil rights. And he did so with no qualms whatsoever because he's a snarky little bitch who sits in the corner and stares at people and never says anything. I also like to point out that Captain Thompson, oh my God, you must have relished that moment. This is the same douchebag, Lieutenant Thompson, who lied to McCann and said I'd been trespassed from multiple public buildings. So this guy's lied about me before, according to McCann. And so he must have loved that moment. And again, we're going to get to all those videos as we go. For those that need to quit caught up, if you haven't checked, at the previous meeting, Mr. Carry-On after the meeting decided to chest bump me and slam a door on me. And now the city of Lorain told me, well, go ahead and, if the court, blah, blah, blah. So I went to the court because they didn't give me an out. And we'll talk about that here. And so now we're going to talk about how they refused to let me come in on Monday. And I'll be showing you the videos of what happened on Monday in between. But, what happened at City Hall actually deserves a serious discussion, though, folks. Not because it was dramatic, loud, or chaotic, right? But because it was a live demonstration of how easily a public building can be treated like a private property when the wrong person shows up with a camera and a memory. Now, it involved access to a public building, obviously, the exercise of constitutional rights, and the way those rights are treated when a public official decides the safest way to handle criticism is to remove the critic from the room. Now, after the video went up, the comment section lit up like a bonfire, right? Garen was all texting me and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I see him. Because that's what always happens. That reaction tells you as much about the culture here in Lorain as the incident tells you about the government. The responses were not grounded in law, policy, or even constitutional principle. They were not thoughtful disagreements. They were mockery. I mean, I don't give a shit about the profanity, but there was a lot of profanity. Personal attacks, okay, cool, whatever. And a kind of casual cruelty people use when they want to silence a subject without touching the substance. When someone cannot rebut the legal issue, right, they reach for the easiest weapon available, which is humiliation. They hope the crowd joins in so the argument never, ever gets to happen, right? Never even have the discussion. Well, tonight we're going to talk about both. We're going to talk about the doorway, right? And I think it's funny that we use the term doorway because in both scenarios, a doorway was blocked. Both with Ray trying to slam a door on me, and another one with the police and the chief slamming another door on me when he refused to take my report. And then this last here, they stood in the doorway and slammed that door on me as well when I tried to go to a public meeting, which constitutionally, as we'll find out, is not a good thing for the police to do. Now, we talk about the doorway, the crowd, because they're part of the same system. We're going to talk about what led up to that moment. Because what happened at the door didn't start at the door, right? It started with like an indefinite administrative ban letter that was never tested in court, never attached to a criminal charge, and never paired with a real hearing. It continued with emails that ignored while the city claimed I could communicate by email. Okay, if I can communicate by email, but then you don't respond. Well, it escalated into a filed injunction and a scheduled hearing date. I immediately went and did that because that's what Bradley said. He wrote it in the paper. He's like, he has his means to appeal. But I didn't. That's the problem. The city didn't give me any means to appeal because they never filed a claim at all. They sent a bullshit letter from Tim Williams, so I believe just typed that shit up and CC'd a bunch of people and sent it out, and the city was obligated to back it up. Either that or Ray did it in a fit before he left on vacation. But now we had this court, and I had a court date. It culminated in that decision to treat the executive directive like it carried some sort of criminal force, which it doesn't. The officers were ready to enforce it as if the court had spoken when it had not. Well, here's the part nobody in the comment section wants to touch, right? All you peanut gallery. In a constitutional system, the law does not become true because 6 officers are standing at the door. It becomes true when it is lawful, when it is neutral, and when it is subject to process. Last night, we watched what happens when process is replaced by posture. We watch what happens when the government stops answering emails and starts answering rights with threats. We watch what happens when a public meeting becomes a closed room for the people they prefer to have there and a barred entrance for those they don't want. That's what it is, folks. You bought a bunch of fucking goons to stand in front of me at the door like they were Nazis in Nazi Germany. And you brought out, big man Fallon, whose lip was just quivering. He's all white shit. I thought he was going to pop a vein. Oh, I just talked to your lawyer. Rah! Dude, I got you that job, man. Why are you tripping? What's your major malfunction, Fallon? You don't like it because I called you out that you violated Lorain police policy, because when you look in your policy manual, failure to take a report is a policy violation. When you look at law and you look at state law, the fact that you were the law enforcement officer on scene and directed me to somebody else, all while coddle, carry on to his car. Yeah, you look like a true servant of the people in that moment. But in the grand scheme of things, a barred entrance for people they don't like is not fair. So if you're looking for a rant, I kind of think you might be a little disappointed in this one, because it's not going to be a rant. It's a record. This is a timeline. They did exactly what I expected them to do, exactly what they needed to do. And this is a constitutional question with names attached, right? That's the problem. And so, anyway, the bottom line is, this is the record, and we're going to get this running out. And we're going to prove what they're doing is a constitutional issue. Because doors can close, crowds can laugh, but the record is preserved. Accountability will always be possible. That's all you have to understand. And that's what I'm here for. You can make fun of me. You can laugh at the fact that I expected to have exactly what happened done. I'm just glad they didn't arrest me. Their hypocrisy knew some bounds in that moment. Because, what actually happened was I went to City Hall, a public building funded by taxpayers and held in trust for the people of this community. I did not go to provoke a confrontation. I did not go to stage a spectacle. They made it that. I went to attend a public city council meeting and document what was occurring inside it, as I've done many times before, and every week, basically almost without cue, as I've been advertising to get people there, to go there, to watch these things. In fact, the meeting in question, I sat through the entire meeting, videoed it, was going to write a story on the radio thing until I got assaulted by the safety service director, the guy that's supposed to provide safety in the building. But, the meeting included discussions of public business, including the dismissal of the firearm ordinance lawsuit that I've appealed. I'm a litigant in that case, and I'm also a journalist covering that issue. My reason for being there was not abstract or theatrical. It was direct, legitimate, and tied to active public business. I even had written a letter that I sent to Brianna before, asking that they show I had communicated with them and file it for the record, which they never do. And they'll take Riley's letter and they'll say file and whatever, but they won't do that with my records. They won't take my letter. So they didn't take my email, which clearly showed that while they were talking about praising bulls, we had already appealed the gun lawsuit. But before I ever walked in that doorway or towards it, I made my intentions clear. I emailed the mayor, the law department, council members, others stating that I would be attending in my capacity as press. I made it clear that it was not a request for permission, but a notice of intent. I stated that I would follow all lawful and content-neutral rules that apply to everyone else. I reminded them that any attempt to interfere with news gathering would result in a very specific or require very specific lawful justification. My attorney separately emailed the chief and others requesting that my constitutional rights be protected and that I not be intimidated or threatened while attending the meeting. Those communications were not ambiguous. They were very explicit. They were very deliberate. And they are preserved in writing. I have them. I was CC'd on them. And there was no meaningful response. Instead, By the time I arrived at City Hall, I'd received no responses. In fact, up to 40 minutes, I think it was like 20 minutes before, I messaged them today. I've heard nothing from you. Even though they said communicate via email. Well, then I arrive at City Hall, and instead of a response to my email just telling me, no, we're not going to let you under threat of arrest, whatever, they had 6 cops there. They brought out all these big shots who were looking to thump me, who wanted their perp walk. And these pigs stood their unconstitutional asses in there and violated my civil rights. And they are fucking pigs. Because you all 5 or 6 of you violated my civil rights. And now you're going to have to actually deal with that consequence. Because as I advised all of you that you were violating my civil rights, and you still escorted me out, that means each one of you will lose your qualified immunity in the 1983 lawsuit that's coming. Each one of you will be sued personally, including the chief. And he'll be sued under the guise of not only that, but under the fact that he supervised all of you while you did it. I mean, Captain Thompson, you of all people should have known better. But you said on video to my face that I was trespassed from a building that I've never been trespassed from, never committed a crime in. And on top of that, you stated that I had to leave under threat of arrest. That's all I needed to hear, bro. The chief later stated that, when he walked outside to talk to me, you watch this big fat ass fucking cruise on by. All I see is fucking, because I had somebody inside recording. I already had people there. I knew they were there before I got there. Riley was sitting out in the parking lot, stuffing his face. I did a little dance for him on the way out. But the chief later stated he got my attorney's email, and that's why he was waiting at the door. Big ass dumb oaf. That detail matters because it shows that this was not. No, he's a captain now. He got promoted, Garen. He got promoted because I objected to his promotion when he got promoted because they still hadn't regulated whether, or decided whether he lied and said something I never said to Chief McCann. But they still promoted him because that's what they do. But it was a conscious decision made with notice. I asked a direct question. I asked whether I was considered trespass, and I was told yes. I was asked whether I'd be arrested if I attempted to enter, and I was told yes. Access was denied. Boom, done. There was no court order presented to me. No judicial filings, no findings that I committed a trespass. There was no criminal citation, no adjudication of wrongdoing. What existed was an executive letter issued on February 17th directing that I all right, well then maybe he didn't get promoted. I don't know. I don't care. Whatever. That I was not to enter city property until further notice, right? Citing, quote, repeated disruptive conduct. Bullshit. And then it referenced ORC 2911.21. You know that ORC, that thing that you guys in the peanut gallery hate that we always talk about, that they use? That's why we use it. Dumbasses. The criminal trespass statute as a potential enforcement mechanism, right? That letter's never been reviewed by a judge. Never resulted in a criminal charge. Never been provided to me. It was provided to me. Never provided me. They've never provided me, a pre-enforcement hearing. They've never given me any sort of due process in the matter. It's never established neutral standards for duration, appeal, or reinstatement. Yet it was treated at the doorway as if it carried the same authority as a judicial trespass order, which it didn't. That distinction is not minor, folks. That's what you got to realize. City Hall is not private property. It is not a membership club. It's not discretionary space where entry depends on whether a particular official is comfortable with a particular critic. Government buildings are public property. Government buildings are public property. Government buildings are public property. They exist for public use, subjectable, and subject to reasonable, lawful, and content-neutral restrictions that are applied evenly and grounded in statute and constitutional principle. When access is denied indefinitely by executive directive without neutral standards, without prior adjudication, and under threat of arrest, the issue is no longer administrative. It becomes constitutional. And the problem they have is they let Tia stay in. They let Tia stay in there after she told me to fuck off and all these things and cursed, and they've let everyone else stay there, but they only selectively go after certain people. Well, that's going to bring us to our first break, folks. Next, we're going to get into the letter and the silence, and we're going to talk about that. But in the meantime, I'm going to take a quick break, and thank you for tuning in. I'm going to play one of the videos that we have from the City Hall. So let's take a look at whichever one's first. That's how you guys are with that stuff, that no comment all the time. 3 reading rule.
We need people like that.
Yeah, and straight. These people just don't want to listen. That's okay. There you go.
Thank you.
Have one. Reach out. Hey, send me all the stuff you guys got. Like I said, I keep telling everybody, keep sending me your stories. Anything you guys got going on out here?
I just made history, so I just...
Congratulations. Sorry, I'm just handing them out.
Rob, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, sir.
I did some research and found out that my ancestors came from Salisbury, North Carolina, and to Oberlin, Ohio in 1856.
What did you do? What did you like do? Like one of those online dated DNA things,
It was a
or?
little bit deeper than that, man. I ended up going to visiting the plantation where I heard that the Chambers' last name came from.
Wow.
And then I ended up talking to historians.
Dude, that's some like Discovery Channel stuff.
Oh, no,
like when they
for
bring
real.
they bring them in and they start asking about their stuff.
Yeah, Davidson College had just sent me down there as an honorary guest and basically had a big ass function. I'm gonna send you a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, send it to me. Send me everything you guys got. Any information you guys got on this, just send me whatever you got. I'll be writing. I'm looking for stories all the time. I love how your government talks to you. Like you ask them questions and they just ignore you. Like, thanks for answering my questions. Appreciate you guys at this public forum, right? Are you going to answer her questions? You're going to answer her questions, but not mine? Don't shut doors on me. Yeah, leave it alone, Ray. Come on, man. Don't be a jerk. No, he's my public servant. I don't care. This is no. You are my public servant. You are my public servant. You are my public servant. Yes, you are. Yes, you are, sir.
Aaron,
yes, you are.
Why are you trying to instigate? Just leave it alone.
Oh, he wouldn't answer my question. No, I'm not instigating anything, sir.
Send him an
Yeah,
email.
go. I'll follow you. I don't care.
You ain't gonna follow me.
Yeah, I will.
Go ahead and follow me.
I'll follow you.
Hey,
Follow you.
Go ahead and follow me.
I will.
hey. Aaron, step away, please.
You're
Don't
stepping up
touch
in
Why
my
are you
face.
following
Don't touch me,
him?
I'm
I can follow him wherever I want to. He's my
Step
government
away
official. No.
Step away.
No, man, look at him.
Why are you trying to
Look at him. He's coming at me.
I'm not coming at you.
Yeah, you are. You coming at me. It's all on video. Keep getting aggressive. This is how you treat your constituents, right?
Why are you instigating?
I'm
I
allowed
don't
to.
understand.
Instigating what? Trying to get an interview?
What is it that you
Trying to get an interview from somebody that works for me?
I'm asking you a question.
Yeah, I'm asking you a question too. Why don't you guys answer my questions?
What question?
What I want to know is why he's assaulting me.
Why are you yelling?
Give me fouling. I want to charge him.
Nobody assaulted you.
Give me fouling. Yeah, oh, really? Really? You think coming up in people's faces and threatening them is okay, Tony? No. Why don't you go to another house and do some more drugs, bro? I got nothing for you. Hey, Fallon, do me a favor. I need to make a report against your safety service director for coming at me just now in the hallway. Got it all on video.
You can go to the police department and make a report.
I want to make one here.
I don't do reports.
You're a law enforcement officer. You're here for this. You were out here.
I do reports.
I don't care. I'm reporting it to you.
Call an officer.
I'm reporting it to you.
Go to the lobby.
I'm reporting it to you.
Well, I'm telling you.
I'm reporting it to you.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not doing it.
I don't care. That's fine. Don't do your job. Break your oath. Oath of office. I reported a crime to you. You don't want to do it? Don't do it.
Well, report it to the safety service director today.
Oh, yeah, the guy that just got in my face?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, of course you didn't. I got it on video right here. You don't want to see the
right
video?
in there and
You don't want to see the video? You don't want to see the video?
And complain.
You don't want to see the video?
You don't want to go in there and complain?
No, I want to make a complaint to you. You're a law enforcement officer. You're here. You're the chief.
Go right in there.
You're the
and
chief.
complain. I don't do reports.
Of course you don't.
I don't.
Of course you don't. You're here.
don't.
You are here to supervise this meeting.
No, I don't.
You're the only law enforcement. Hey, they just
Go right
announced
in
you on the
there
thing.
And make the complaint.
No.
You know how it works.
Yeah, I know. You guys, I make the complaint and you ignore me for 6 weeks like you did last time.
Go in there.
So the same guy that I've charged once has just come at me and you're going to ignore me.
and
You're going to
make
ignore
the
me.
complaint.
You're going to ignore me.
Go in there and make
You're
the
going to ignore me.
complaint.
You're going to ignore
Go
me.
in there,
You're going to ignore me.
complaint.
Here, you're going to ignore me. Cool. You're going to ignore me. That's cool.
Go in there.
Hey, look, guys, this is your chief of
and
police.
make the complaint.
This is the chief of police not taking my complaint under ORC.
Go in there.
Oh,
and
no,
make
no,
the
no,
complaint.
no. You don't instruct me on how to do my complaint, sir.
You don't instruct me how to.
Yes, I do. I actually do instruct you because you're my government official, sir.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. And I just did, and I have been. And you've been providing it just like you're supposed to. Government official. Government official. Yeah, keep talking shit. I don't really care. We can play this game. I don't want to leave you guys watching the rest of all of that. I go outside, and Garen goes outside, and subsect all that stuff is we hammer him up about what's what. And again, I know a lot of people, you don't like my language, you don't like this, you don't like that, but the bottom line is he is a government official. He is my government official. He's come at me in the previous one. He yelled at me in the middle of a meeting. You guys may think that's okay. Maybe you don't care. Maybe the public doesn't care. Maybe the people on Facebook don't care. But I do. I don't like being yelled at by a grown-ass man in the middle of a meeting because I whispered to my buddy. When that same person let Tia Hilton come in there and tell me to basically to go fuck myself and said nothing. The hypocrisy of these assholes. They let everyone come in. I mean, the whole point of Garen and I talking to them in the parking lot is I have the video of the day that they threw Paula and Jane out. And Fowling himself said that we could go out in that parking lot and do exactly what we did. So that's the problem. You got, yeah, I get it. I get stuttery. I repeat myself. These are part of my PTSD. And the thing you don't know as the general public is the city has all of that on file. 2 years ago, I gave it to them. A year ago, I gave it to them. Even recently, I've given it to them. They have more than I'm required to give by law, so they understand how to deal and treat me. And so in Carry-On's case, I gave him the exact roadmap on how to come at me or not come at me. All the things that I asked him not to do, he did in that one moment. Now, you can call that coincidence. I call it baiting. He was hoping I would react. Now, you can say I was the problem, but I continue to call everybody sir. Sure, my voice elevated like a person does when a bear's coming at him. But Carry-On was walking away. He turned back towards me, got right in my face, glossy-eyed, and was mad, and then smiled in that creepy, devilish sort of way. And I'm just like, look, man, I just wanted to know about the stupid CCI tower thing. And neither one of them would answer me because they don't like me. And that's not their responsibility at that. They don't have to like me. Just answer my questions. Oh, I interrupted an interview, please. He went and started talking to her. If he wanted a private interview, there was an office door open right behind him he could have utilized. Now, the February 17th letter that they sent me states that I may continue to communicate with the city by email, mail, or telephone, and then staff will respond appropriately. Now, I relied on that representation. I emailed, I requested clarification. I asked, how was I supposed to attend the public council meeting lawfully that I'm constitutionally allowed to participate in? I asked what was the process to challenge the directive that they had given me. My attorney emailed as well, specifically invoking constitutional protections and advising the city that interference with those rights would create liability. We get no response. None whatsoever. They just don't give a shit. That matters because the same letter that claims alternative access also contains the enforcement mechanism. It directs that I am not to enter or remain on the City of Lorain property, including but not limited to City Hall and other municipal facilities until further notice. It does not define until further notice. It does not provide a review date, and it does not outline an appeal procedure. Hell, it does not cite findings of fact. It does not identify specific incidents or adjudications. It simply asserts repeated disruptive conduct. And then threatens arrest and prosecution under ORC 2911.21 if I do not comply. So on paper, I'm told I can conduct business by email
and that staff will respond appropriately or by phone. But in reality, when constitutional access to public meeting was at issue, the emails went unanswered. That transforms the supposed alternative into something illusionary. And it becomes a sentence in a later letter, rather than a functioning process, right? Like, that's just it. A theatrical channel. That produces no engagement, is not meaningless access. I'm sorry, meaningful access. It's more about insulation. The city says you may conduct business by email, but refuses to respond when constitutional rights are implicated. The alternative access offered becomes a line on paper rather than an actual pathway. The letter becomes both the barrier and the shield. It bars entry until further notice. Then it threatens arrest under criminal trespass statute. Then it offers email as the substitute while remaining silent when that substitute is invoked. Due process requires notice and an opportunity to be heard before the government deprives someone of a protected liberty interest. Whether you like me or not, that's the truth. And an indefinite ban from public property coupled with the explicit threat of arrest and prosecution implicates both First Amendment rights to petition and observe government and 14th Amendment protections of procedural fairness. Before enforcement, there must be structure. I mean, even James McCann said it. You can't just go willy-nilly kicking people out and arresting people, because then we become the police department that's known as that. Well, guess what, dude? You followed in James's footsteps, Mr. Fowling. Wow, must be a proud day for you. Proud African-American man following in the footsteps of a short, white, racist police chief. That's some small shoes to fill. Good job, man. Good job. Like, I thought you were the second coming of Martin Luther, man. Like, you disappointed me so much. I thought for sure that you would understand the plight of the people of Lorain. A man that had struggled under a James McCann for years to never see the light, to never see the chief's position, to be constantly withheld. I mean, I even heard there was some issue with your wife looking up some records once that got her in a little trouble. I don't know if that's true or not, in all fairness. But you got held back. And I basically kicked the door down for you, and then you marched right up to the gates like the Gestapo, and we're like, what is your purpose for visiting the lake? What is it? The Leningrad on the lake. This property is off limits to the likes of you. Bro, like, you turned me away at the door like I was... I mean, arguably, this is civil rights. There must be a defined criteria for reinstatement, though. There must be neutral standards. There must be structure before they can enforce it. They gave me none of that. There was nothing. They just said, hey, fuck you. You're not allowed here anymore. Fuck you and your dog and your sister and your mom. You're not allowed to come to City Hall no more. Anyway, like, they gave me no alternative. Instead, they just went dark and followed by enforcement. Like, the letter was not reviewed by a judge. It didn't do shit. It was not accompanied by him. It was written by Tim fucking Williams, for Christ's sakes. Tim Williams. Dude. Really? Really? Not tied to any criminal charge. They're not going to take it in front of a judge because they knew that shit would get thrown right out. Yet there was operationalized as though it carried judicial weight. Yeah, I do write a script before I start this. I do pause it quite often to do these random off takes where I just talk. But this is my guideline, so I wrote this, and yet I can't apparently read it. Operationalized. There you go. Operationalized. operationalized as though it carried judicial weight. Like officers were stationed at the entrance, and I was asked if I intended to enter. I was told I was considered trespass by Lieutenant, Captain, whoever the fuck Thompson. Well, not gonna work here anymore. Because if I have my way, he'll lose his qualified immunity for doing exactly what I told him not to do, which he should have known better than to do at the level of officer that he was. A staff level officer should know you can't just enforce written policy. Look, I get it. If you guys wanted to trespass me during the day while I was if I came down there again and tried to pull that stunt where I stood there every day for 4 days, sure, I get it. I stood there for 4 days to get paperwork, as I'm legally allowed to do, but I only stayed in the lobby. You guys, I stay within my realm. I stay in the common areas. I stay in the area that are public forums. So, I'm imagining whatever. Anyway, I can't start that part yet because I keep wanting to talk about that because they asked me I recently got some court paperwork today that I'm not going to talk about, but officers were stationed at the entrance. I mean, like the Gestapo. And they did tell me I'd be arrested if I entered. That sequence is not administrative housekeeping. It's executive action enforced under color of law. And when silence precedes enforcement, the Constitution question becomes so unavoidable. You end up in the fact and understanding the fact that the court was already involved. Before March 2nd, this was not some hallway dispute spiraling into chaos. Before Monday, it was already in court. In February, I had filed a motion for temporary restraining order. Now listen to that temporary restraining order because it's important. Seeking injunctive relief. I filed a complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief asserting violations of the First Amendment, procedural due process, unconstitutional vagueness, and enforcement under color of law. That case is set for hearing, or should be, for the 5th in 2 days. And the judiciary was already engaged. I already, got Judge Cannon on board as my judge, or as our judge, I should say, and we got a case number. Now, the legal system was already invoked before I went down to City Hall. I didn't ignore the process. I did not try to force entry in secret. I did not ambush anyone. I filed pleadings in the court, which are clearly fine. You can find them right now in the court record. I posted them. I requested judicial review. I got Judge Cannon for the judicial review. I placed the constitutional question squarely before a court of law as I'm supposed to do. That's not crazy, folks. That's just doing what I'm supposed to do. Now, I get it. Maybe some of you don't like it because you don't know how to do it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't learn or want to have it done for you. I warned the city in advance that I plan to attend that meeting on Monday. I asked to be allowed to lawfully conduct business. I'd already talked to Karen. I wasn't even going to speak at the meeting. I was going to come in, I was going to video, and I was going to leave. I provided notice through counsel. My lawyer, he sent a letter. I sent letters. And they didn't answer me. I sent letters all day. I sent letters the day before. I was sending letters, like on Sunday. No answer. I've gotten answers before from Bradley and others on Sundays, not this one. They just shut down all communication with me because that's what they said. They said, you can't come on city property. You have to use email. And so when I use email, they just don't respond. Now, I provided notice directly to all of them. I made it clear that I was invoking my rights and not creating any disruption. I also made it clear I wasn't asking permission. The response was not engagement with the legal issues, right? The response was not clarification. The response was not accommodation, pending the judicial review that they knew was coming because I notified them of that as well. The response was 6 cops waiting at the door. And you wonder why we fucking hate you. I mean, you want me to support the cops and go to, coffee with a pig, but I'm sitting there watching him go. His little lip quivering like a little girl because he didn't get his first kiss. And I heard you people in the audience, get him, Chief. Fuck off. He's only Chief because of me. And all you bitches in the audience that were saying, get him, Chief, you're also saying that to McCann, too. Remember what happened to him? Me. You guys like to forget the fact that none of the Middlebrook stuff comes out or gets pushed without me. Period. Hell, even on on Tucker's show, Katie, I think it was Katie and Tucker. It was either Katie and Tucker or it was Tia and Tucker. I don't know. They admitted that I was the reason really that McCann got fired or retired forcefully because I was the one that was making the most noise. Well, squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I'm sorry you guys don't like that, but I'm a veteran. I support my Constitution. You're like, oh, you're not, no one's going to like you. Oh, boo. Oh, sorry, Muffin. No one's going to like me. That makes me sad at 52 years old. Gen X, I really don't give two shits whether you like me. Right? I tell you what. I don't know how much, payphones don't exist anymore. I told you how Gen X I am, but if payphones still exist, I'd give you a quarter or 35 cents or 50 cents and tell you to call somebody who cares. Somebody said to me the other day, like, I was like, listen, why don't you go give that opinion to someone who actually values it? Because I don't know you. And honestly, you should all feel that way. Why would you give credence to some random stranger online giving their opinion of you in your daily life? And that goes even for the people that are talking shit to me, to all of you out there. As a therapist and a social worker, I always say, why are you giving credence and power to these people by allowing them to impose their views on you? You know your views aren't the same as their views. None of our views are the same. That's what makes us beautiful. That's what makes this country beautiful. But when you start saying you must believe in this, otherwise, then you have a problem. But hey, they didn't give me engagement with the legal issues or any of that, right? They didn't even want to accommodate me. They just met me at the door with the cops, including, again, high-ranking cops. You wasted some good money there just to have them on there. What did you think I was going to do, fight? I've never fought any of you once. I stopped caring because of your crazy gun laws. Because I know you guys are going to come after me no matter what, so I can't even carry. I don't feel safe leaving my home. You banned me from all municipal property like the tyrants that you are. Swear to God, I really am living in Leningrad on the lake. Listen, comrade, you will be fine. You have your home, you have your car. Unfortunately, we will no longer let you have a job. We will also no longer let you come criticize us at the podium or come to the city council meeting. I know, Constitution be damned. We will take care of you. We will send you to the gulag. We will take you to the Lorain County jail, and then we will leave you there with your buddy, Sheriff Hall, who I'm sure will assign you to the best guards, including the ones that leaked all the information to you about Kundalad, and see what they do to you. Funny how they all have me, Morris and Chief McCann didn't have a problem using me when they released all city council statements to me. Hall didn't have a problem using me when, you've seen the emails. This motherfucker used me so bad it's not even funny. He used me to steal an election. Yeah, I said it out loud, so what? Yes, he did. And while he publicly claimed that we didn't work together, I have emails that prove otherwise. Oh, well, his lawyer / now, head of his, you guys talk about money. Ask where all the money's going to pay for all those majors and all his buddies that he hired that didn't have seniority at the sheriff's department that just came in with the new regime. Mary was right on that. She said, hey, who's he getting jobs for? Not this guy. Because he knew in his heart of hearts that I would never go along with it. Everybody knows when you freaking get involved with an idealist, sooner or later it's going to bite you in the ass. Most people that have engaged with me like that fail to realize that. They love to utilize me for my, white knight attitude when it goes against their opponent. But the second that white knight turns on them, they're like, whoa, you weren't supposed to come after me. Well, bro, what gave you the inclination in our relationship, especially to you, Sheriff Hall? I told you straight to your face. Like, literally. To your motherfucking face. I was like, hey, Jack, once the election's over, I'm going to give you about a year, right? And then after that year, then all gloves are off, right? Yeah, that's cool, Aaron. That's real cool. Yeah, I get that. Like, sir, you said, sir. Good, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, because you always use the word sir. Okay, cool, Jack. So then what happens 3 months or like the first month in or whatever when you take a cruise and suddenly you're seen at an airport with Dave Moore, who's now seemingly falling down and I told you not to get involved with those people, and then all your little friends at the lunch bunch came in. Oh, you don't want to talk about that? Oh, okay. Oh, not you don't want to talk about the fact that you said you recorded my calls when you were talking to me about the assault? Oh, you don't want to talk about that? Okay. You don't want to talk about how your wife went at me online and then the Tonys got together to like silence her? You don't want to talk about that? Oh, you don't want to talk about how I gave you all those documents on Chief McCann that were given to me by an anonymous source and then you guys did nothing and then shit on me? I'm still waiting for the auditor report about it. You don't want to talk about that either? Oh, okay. This guy don't talk about nothing. I get it. I mean, look, when you're a stick and you're just doing whatever, I guess that's what happens, right? But that's what I've come to expect from Lorain County since I moved here. I mean, honestly, the government in this complex, government, the city, honestly, if you even go up the household of the state, man, I'm sorry for all of you people in Lorain. Every last citizen, Republican or Democrat, you've all been lied to. I'm also sorry that only a small percentage of you vote. So in that aspect, I guess, touche, you get what you deserve. But, you know, that whole thing changes the tone because when a constitutional dispute is already pending before a judge and the government chooses to enforce its directive in the most restrictive manner possible, right? Before the courts even ruled, the court that they didn't even have the common decency to schedule. That's not what we call, neutral preservation of order. That's executive action. And it's taken in the shadow of judicial review. So they knew. The city knew the matter was set for hearing. They act like they didn't, but they did. I sent it to them. The city knew the claims included First Amendment violations and due process challenges. They knew. I sent it to them. The city knew the injunction request was pending. I posted it online, for God's sakes. Yet instead of allowing the court to resolve this issue while preserving the status quo, it escalated enforcement at the entrance of the public meeting. They could have let me come in just for the meeting. I'm not stupid enough. I'm not going to go in there and cause a scene. I'm going to go in there and video. I'm going to recognize my rights and I'm going to leave. And I hope that's what you were going to do, but I knew it's not what you were going to do. The fact that you brought fouling and 6 cops or 5 cops, make it 6, I think, total, is amazing because they're upper level echelon cops that should have known better. They're all going to lose their qualified immunity. We're going to save a lot of money on salary. Maybe when you promote the next officers into their jobs and come up with a new chief, you can get a lower salary because they are going to lose their qualified immunity. There may not be a lot of cases like this in Ohio, but there's enough to show that along with the federal and state enforcement acts, and along with the other one that I already have against Carry On and Lorain in particular because of their retaliatory acts, this is going to add right in nice next to it. Eventually, your insurance company, who I've spoken to many times, will want to settle. You guys are a train wreck that keeps, like a broken slot machine that keeps paying off. For those that say, oh, you're just trying to get a payout, no, because I'll probably end up giving half of that to people that take care of people in my life. But at some point, you have to realize that's the only outcome for these types of things. As much as we want to argue about, oh, you're taking money from the people. Well, no, they are. You don't get to blame me. It's like blaming the gun for shit. It's the gun people that are taking your money. No, it's the dude pulling the trigger. You don't blame the. Yeah, I know you guys are trying that, Democrat. Trying to like attack the gun manufacturer. Oh, it's the gun maker's fault. No, it's not. Anymore, it's the whiskey maker's fault. The only time that starts coming into play is when you talk about like service laws because you should know you've overserved someone. But the city knew the claims included First Amendment violations and due process challenges. So the city knew the injunction request was pending, that I'm asking for a temporary restraining order. Yet instead of allowing the court to resolve the issue while preserving the status quo, it escalated enforcement at the entrance of a public meeting. That's what I was going into. Again, it's not like I showed up in the middle of the week. Courts have long recognized that the loss of the First Amendment freedoms, even for minimal periods of time, constitutes irreparable injury. Irreparable injury. Irreparable injury. That principle exists because a constitutional participation in government is not something that can be retroactively restored. You can't just give it back. You already took it. Time lost. It's constitutionality lost. It's you pissing on the Constitution, just like Brinke burned it with her cigar bar. A meeting happens once. Votes are taken once. Public comments periods occur once. If you are barred from entry, you cannot rewind the clock later and recreate that moment. Denial of access to a public meeting is not scheduling inconvenience. I can't get that time back. And I was there to talk about something that was dear to me, that gun law that you passed. It has no business. It doesn't protect kids, okay? I'm just going to say it out loud. It doesn't. There's nothing in Lorain's gun law that protects any child. It's about carry and it's about it's about those things. If they were truly honest with themselves, they would admit that gun laws currently protect kids by saying they can't own them or be in possession of them. What more are you going to do? But okay. That's what they're really mad about. Because they know I've appealed it already and it's going to win and it's going to go back to Brinke and then everyone's going to look stupid. And they hate it when they lose to me. I don't blame you. Not like I rub it in too much, but I'm pretty nice about it after you lose. I just move on. Like, see, I told you. Like Vicky Valancourt and Bobby Boucher and the Waterboy one. She tells that sideline reporter, it ain't a guess. It's what it's going to be. Ooh. And then that's what it was. So the exclusion from a forum where policy, litigation, and municipal action are discussed and decided is unacceptable. That's constitutional violation. Say it how you want, but when the exclusion occurs, while the court's already preparing to hear the constitutional challenge on behalf, to the exclusion itself on behalf of me, the fact that they said I had a legal breath to challenge it in the paper, well, the legal stakes now increase. The question no longer becomes whether the government is preserving order or preempting, review. It grows beyond that, and that's not a rhetorical question, right? Like that's how that is the core of why the court was involved in the first place. The city didn't give me an option to challenge this. They just did it. It was the most dumbass move of a dumbassery I've ever seen in my life. Up till now, they've usually been fairly decent opponents, I guess, if you were to call it a chess game. But this move felt emotional. Just like I never expected Karen to chest bump me or slam a door on me. And everyone wants to doubt that, but when you look at all three body cam views, the one that's back here clearly catches that door as it comes in on me because the way it's strapped, I strap it like this. So the camera's hanging over this back side. So what you catch is this back side turned as I'm walking through the door, right? So it catches the door closing. It shows that I'm clearly in the doorway. The front side catches the door closing. It shows I'm clearly in the doorway. Ray slammed the fucking door on me. Carissa wants to put in a report. He put his foot in the door. Yeah, so it wouldn't fucking hit me. Listen here, you little Oompa Loompa. You should be very concerned about swinging doors coming at you, okay? You could get knocked across the room if that door hits you. I am disabled. I am not able to handle that kind of abuse as much as Santa wants to believe it. I went to the VA today, and my doctor, who hadn't seen me since the incident, but seen all the medical reports from the VA and since Cleveland and the ER here locally, was like, I'm going to send you to the TBI clinic. I read what happened to you. That was horrible, and I don't think it's okay, and I don't think you're okay. And, she checked me out, and she wants to send me to the TBI clinic to see how that's affecting me. So again, yeah, slamming a door on a guy that's supposed to go to the TBI clinic. Thanks, Ray. And again, you guys all say I'm mentally ill. Okay, so the city's picking on a mentally ill guy. Either way, however you sell it, you're the asshole. The city calls it de-escalation in their little report to the Chronicle, but it's not. So I think we're gonna take our next break here. 2 in an hour, I guess. One every 30 minutes is good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a quick break. And again, as I said, I'll be playing the videos. So the next video is an interesting video, in fact. So this video goes along with the fact that I said I was going to be playing a lot of things that people have given me. This is one that I find very interesting. You got to listen to the very beginning of it, right? The very beginning. where where my friend Garen is having a conversation with a sitting councilwoman, and she says that the legal department is threatening her, and it's amazing stuff, right? Like, I really think you guys should listen. I did tell you guys what was going to happen. I told you I was going to share this stuff. So, toodaloo.
Answer for, but I'm telling you what I was told for me.
Who told you this? The law department? That you cannot talk to a citizen because they...
I'm asking you to not put me in a position to hurt myself. I mean, I'm telling you what was said. Do you think that they will deny it? You know that they would. You know that. But I also, I mean, I'm telling you...
This must be pretty serious downtown. I must have them by the balls, right?
I'm not denying that, okay? But that's, I mean, I was
You know,
guidance.
Brianna and Maggie are illegal. They broke the law.
Okay, well, I will tell you this. They both basically cried in the law department to allow themselves to ask to be sworn in, and the law department won't let them.
Why?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't have an answer for you.
Something's not right, Victoria. I'll tell you what.
I mean, I saw it.
You and the new girls on council and Andy Durwall are going to have to start asking some questions here. This is all bullshit. I mean, that's all I've asked for them to get their sworn oath. I don't want to sue them.
Like I said, both of them have been up there, I mean, in tears, saying, let's just do this. It doesn't matter. You guys say that I don't, and he says that we do. It's not going to hurt anything. And they were told no.
Well, was it Riley, Zaleski, or Levesque that told him no?
I can't give you that information.
All right. Anyhow, how have you been? I mean, I seen a picture of you with Jack today. I was going to say something, but since there was so much stress, I thought you looked very nice today at the palace.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Was Ray there?
You know,
Yeah, that was starting to get a little in the personal area, which I'm not looking to expose. I just kind of wanted to point out that there you heard it live for the first time here on Knapp Unplugged. Councilwoman Victoria Kempton admits on recording that the law department threatened her. She's also stating that you know how they are. Now that goes along with the other video that I posted the other day that Garen has, where she said Tony Demakia wanted to get Garen taken out of the city council. I have emails directly showing Ray Carrion discussing with Mary Springowski, trying to get rid of me in legal means. Wow, that seems like a conspiracy. And for the record, when you threaten someone, a sitting council person, with no legal coverage because of their affiliation with their constituents, that I don't know, the fucking people they're supposed to represent, fuck me, right? Like, how foolish was I to think that they were supposed to represent us? And for the record, I watched the council meeting. Touche, Angel Arroyo, champion for lights at the basketball courts. Good for you, bro. Good for fucking you. I'm glad you went after him for that. You're right. They do need lights down there. I think they need to fix the courts. I advocated for them to fix the court down by my house in the park. But good job. I just want to say that. But that's what you hear, right? You guys don't think I have what I say I have, and I have that and more. So much more. I'd be scared if I was most people. Imagine. I want you to ask yourself a question. A guy that's only lived here 6 years, doesn't know any of you, but I have all this. How'd that happen? How did it happen? You apparently made a lot of enemies, folks. And when you made an enemy of me, a truth teller, you really screwed up. Because I don't do things half-assed, and I'm very articulate, and I'm very specific, and I understand the law, and I understand what I'm here to do.
And apparently y'all don't. You were here to govern. You were here to do the right thing. You were here to take care of us. And you failed. I know Victoria's going to be mad that I put that out. But I told her before the same thing. You stand by and let this happen. You understood what they were doing. You set in sessions, whether you want to admit it or not. I know, she's never, broken the trust of executive session. But you know that they've talked about me not only there, but in other places. I've been spoken about in manager meetings. I have the evidence. They put it down in documentation. So again, I put it to all the city council members, even like I did that night before I went into City Hall. Technically, all of them are at fault. Every last one of you should have fought to have me in there, but you didn't. So you violated your oath of office. And I know, Aaron, that's harsh, right? Like my daughter said tonight when she got her tablet taken away because she took it into the bathroom once again while she was taking a shower. And I said, look, man, you knew you weren't supposed to do it. Well, you could have given me a warning. I've given you multiple warnings. That's not fair. Well, life's not fair, right? The city sends you a letter barring you from municipal property issued as a de-escalation, then frames that matter because it attempts to redefine what happened. On February 16th, I alleged non-consensual physical contact occurred in a public hallway at City Hall. Now, I'm pretty sure whatever witness they want to bring is either Carissa or Tony, who's willing to lie. But I have the video footage. The sequence is on video. My rear-facing camera shows the door closing and stopping on me while I was already occupying the threshold of the doorway, well within it. I didn't release that right away. I only released that recently. My forward-facing footage shows the approach, right? It's looking from the shoulder up, out like this. When the city did all this initially, they were just looking at my body cam live. That's all anyone sees because the Lorain Richies of the world and all these people. Oh, and if you're watching or one of your moles is watching, hi. Like, you got a big mouth. And I see what you're writing on that page. Tisk, tisk, tisk. You don't stop, do you? Not even when you're getting sued. That's cool. So no one thought I would have these two angles, even though I'm wearing two body cams, and I do. So one shows here, one shows here, right? They're like this. So the door closes, it catches the backside coming in on me because it's the angle of it. It's perfect. I couldn't ask for better footage. And then, you also see me as I step forward. He's leaving. Yeah, I said I'm going to follow him while he's in a public building. He could have gone into the office doors behind him, but instead he chose to walk down the hallway that I exit out of. Now, again, you have to understand that wasn't just some door. That's one of two authorized exits from the building. That's the one of the handicap rep that he slammed on me, the handicap guy. Thanks, Ray. You're kind of a vindictive prick. You slammed a door on a disabled veteran who's told you. I've sent you the documentation. You sat on my porch. If you couldn't handle the questions, tell me to fuck off, but don't hit me with a door, man. You guys in Lorain like your violence. I'll say that much. I attempted to report the incident in real time to the only cop present, and that was Fallon. But he wouldn't do it, right? Because he doesn't do that, right? Chiefs don't do that. Well, they do actually. By code, you're still a law enforcement officer, and if you're the only one on scene, and by law, and by code, and by your own oath, and by your own city policy, you were supposed to take the report, but you didn't. You guys sent the letter to me by a sergeant, but you still didn't ask to take my report, knowing I wanted to take one. Why would I want to stay there in a building that I'd just been assaulted in to give a report? You guys don't think about that? 10 days later, the city did not change the official, charge the official accused, right? The official, he got Ray Carrion stayed in position. Instead, the city issued a letter removing me from all city property until further notice. Enforceable by arrest if violated. That's not rhetoric, that's sequence. If that's de-escalation, then the mechanism chosen for de-escalation was to remove the complaining party from public access rather than to impose neutral restrictions on both parties or await judicial review. They could have just given Ray permission to go out the back and said, don't hang around into the public areas. And then they could have told me, don't engage Ray. Okay, cool. But no, there was no mutual directive. There was no temporary separation order limited to a single meeting. There was no structured time, place, manner, protocols announced in advance. What was issued was an indefinite exclusion from all municipal property. De-escalation is ordinarily narrow and temporary, right? Like it gives a little. If that's Bradley's idea of de-escalation, it's kind of like kicking someone in the crotch. Like, oh, sorry, I was de-escalating. Well, I'm gonna take care of that when I get up. So, an open-ended ban backed by a criminal trespass language is not, anything more than structural. He made it structural, right? A public exit, not a private office. The location of the incident matters, right? This was not a private office door, as I said earlier. It was a public doorway used for ingress and egress to council chambers. It's an entry and an exit, including an accessible route. It's routinely used by members of the public before and after the meetings. Half the time it's used by, I think, some of the city council members because it's the handicap ramp. No, Joel's got to use it. I was already in the doorway when the door moved and stopped me. I should say it hit me. And you guys want to say, oh, he put his foot down. Yeah, my foot was there, and it hit my foot, my boot, and my bad leg. But hey, there wasn't. I could clearly see, and you can see in the video, right? When you look, you'll see that. Well, you would have seen. I'm not playing that video. There's an open space behind Ray and Carissa that are back there talking, right? You can see an open office. It's the clerk's office. They could have easily gone in there if they wanted privacy. Retreat was physically available for him without closing a door into an occupied threshold. Those are physical facts. He was in a public space. And when the narrative shifts to interrupting an interview, the setting remains a public exit corridor adjacent to a public meeting. No neutral rule had been announced restricting presence in that hallway. No directive was issued to relocate. No content neutral policy was applied to create a press-only zone. Or I should say a chronicle-only zone because I consider myself press. I got the business license to prove it. The hallway served as public access point. And in that setting, the government may impose reasonable content neutral restrictions, but it cannot retroactively convert a public exit into a discretionary exclusion zone after a confrontation. Now, the removal before adjudication is a big problem for me. I filed a complaint alleging assault because, again, that's what they tell you to do. My attorney, the cops, they all say, oh, file a report. And then everyone gets mad. Oh, he files police reports. Oh, he files lawsuits. Oh, you mean I follow the law? Dumbass. I filed a complaint alleging assault. I preserved the video. I even tried to show it to the police chief. He didn't want to look. Because God forbid he actually, had to put his glasses on. I invoked the courts, because that's what I had to do. They didn't give me any other alternative. There was no, Aaron, here's your reason to appeal. There was no court paperwork. There was no nothing. It was just it was literally a typed letter from Tim Williams. But by the way, Tim, congratulations on finding out how to use a typewriter, man. Amazing job. Just and a computer at that, like 2-1, double score for the assistant safety director, aka scapegoat. Because when this all goes down, who they're going to blame? They're going to say, oh, well, Tim sent it without permission. Even though we backed it, we just did it to cover our employee because we care. If the city believed I committed a crime, there's a process for that, right? Charge it, adjudicate it. Let a judge decide. If the city believed the official committed a crime, there's a process for that too. Investigate, document, and act. Instead, what they did was an administrative exclusion before any findings were issued. Before any of that neutral court finding that Bradley bragged about in the newspaper. But courts have recognized that the loss of First Amendment freedoms, even for a minimal period of time, constitutes irreparable injury, as I've said. Denial of access to a public meeting is not a minor inconvenience. It's literally way worse. It's a deprivation of constitutional participation in government oversight. Like, you took away a key right. De-escalation doesn't override due process. Structure does not yield to silence. If the city's goal is a resolution, then a resolution runs through neutral standards and judicial review, not through unilateral exclusion and uniformed thugs with guns at the door. I have stated my belief that that video shows what it shows, and I've shown you the video. I've filed a complaint. I have asked for investigation. Those are the proper channels. The official remains in position. I was removed from public property pending a hearing. That's not an emotional claim. That's procedural fact. If the city stands by its actions, if Bradley and crew can defend them in court, if the footage supports my allegations, though, that will be evaluated by investigators and a judge. The Constitution does not depend on adjectives. It depends on process, on due process. And I was not given that at all. So coming up next, we're going to be on the comment section reaction. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to keep going because it's 10:13. What followed the posting of the video was not legal response, right? It was a policy discussion. It was not statutory rebuttal. It was not a constitutional argument. It was a flood of mockery, right? Go online. I get it. I'm going to give this a little credence because it bothered Garen a little bit, and I want to talk about it just because he doesn't understand why people are so sad in this town and that they feel that they have to be this way. But, I mean, come on. Some of it's kind of funny. I mean, they're just being douchers online. That's what trolls do. But there were emojis of clowns. There were statements telling me to get a life. There were suggestions I should seek psychiatric evaluation. Listen, as I've done that. All right. So I already know what I have. Very clear on that. There are accusations that I'm simply trying to sue people for attention. I really don't. Well, I mean, arguably I'm here, but I don't want to sue for attention. I can get attention any other way. You see it. I don't need attention. I don't need, what I need is for the Constitution to be followed. But these are the way things are always portrayed when you want to attack the messenger, not the message. That's what it was really meant about when you say that. There were comments mocking my appearance. I think they make fun of my teeth. I don't really give a crap. I love my teeth. Spent good money on them. Made them white as shit. Don't care. Why would you turn your teeth, green? Makes no sense. Everybody else out there, Lorain's trying to, have teeth as white as mine. Hell, half you be lucky to have teeth like mine. Half you don't have all your teeth. So don't come at me. Like, I understand. It sucks because I had mine broken. But don't hate on me. Don't come at me with your bad teeth and bad breath and be all mad at me about my teeth. There were comments about that. There were remarks minimizing the physical contact entirely. And there were even statements normalizing the violence, like implying if someone gets hit, they must have deserved it. None of those comments addressed the central question. Not one of them analyzed whether an indefinite executive ban from public property issued without judicial process is actually lawful. Not one person cited a statute authorizing that action. Not one referenced any First Amendment standard for exclusion from public forums. Not one explained what procedural safeguards were provided before enforcement. There was no discussion of due process, no discussion of notice and opportunity to be heard, no discussion of neutral standards. Mockery is so much easier than constitutional analysis, folks. Personal attacks, way easier than structural debate. I know, I can attack all day long. I can make fun. I was in the Army. That's like our national pastime. But it was simpler to reduce the dispute to a personality than to confront the legal mechanics of state power. Now, it's easier to call someone a clown than to articulate what legal authority permits an indefinite ban backed by the threat of arrest when a dispute shifts from structure to insults. It often signals that the structural questions are uncomfortable. The lawfulness of executive exclusion from public property is not resolved with, emojis. It's resolved by statute, case law, and procedural safeguards. If the city's action is lawful, it should be defensible in those terms. If it's not, no amount of ridicule anyone gives me online will repair it. So when I win, I hope y'all are going to, own up. Public discourse has a way of targeting the messenger always when the substance becomes a little too inconvenient or uncomfortable. But the constitutional analysis does not turn on popularity contests. Neither do I. It turns on process, due process, the things I didn't get. The question has never been whether people like me. We give a shit. I'm not here. I'm not here for your entertainment. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm not here to please you. I'm not looking for friendship. I'm not looking for your respect or, for your, even your pity or whatever you may throw on me. Like, save your judgment for someone who actually, cares about you and cares about what you think. Because I have people in my life that care about, I care about what they think, and they're okay with what I'm doing. In fact, they understand it because they're educated individuals who understand the Constitution matters. And then if you let them do this to me, it won't be long before they're doing it to you and your kids. Until you have an issue, until they take your job, until you have a chief of police come and run rampant over you. The question's never been about like dislike. The question's always been about whether the government followed the law before restricting access to a public space. Period. Someone said, all you can do is quote ORC. Aaron, ORC. Like, one of the most repeated refrains people say is that. All you do is quote ORC. Oh my God. The law, right? If citing the Ohio Revised Code somehow is improper or obsessive, that's criticism really misses the fundamentals. The ORC is the codified law of the state, right? It's the framework that governs what public officials may or may not do and what we may or may not do. When government power is exercised, the question is not whether someone finds the citation irritating, because nobody wants to be cited for shit. The question is whether the action is authorized by statute. If I quote 2903.13 of the Ohio Revised Code when discussing assault, it's because that's the statute defining assault in Ohio. If I cite RC 2935.03, regardless of duties of peace officers, regarding duties of peace officers, it is because that is the statute describing those duties. If I reference trespass law when a ban letter threatens arrest, it's because trespass is defined by statute. Quoting the ORC is not harassment. I think it is. God forbid, like our education system has failed us. Just have a thought outside the box for a minute. It is how citizens analyze government conduct and our own and each other's. It's what tells someone they can't break into your house, shoot you, steal your shit. The government does not operate on vibes. It operates on statutory authority. Next they get into, well, you're harassing the government and police. Well, listen, you can't harass the harassers. And the word harassment has legal meaning. It generally involves repeated conduct directed at a specific person that serves no legitimate purpose and causes distress. Filing complaints, requesting reports, asking for clarification, recording public officials in public spaces, and citing statutes governing official conduct are not illegitimate purposes, folks. They're civic actions. They're constitutionally protected actions. When a citizen questions a public official in a public building about official conduct, that's not harassment, it's oversight. When a citizen asks a police chief to take a report after an alleged physical contact, that's not harassment. That's invoking law enforcement authority. If the government characterizes persistent questioning as harassment, then any active citizen becomes a problem simply for being engaged. Next, it'll be Jane and Paula. It'll be Tia. You guys can sit back there in the crowd after I get, removed. And instead of standing up for me and saying that was wrong, you can say, well, it's his approach. Well, you know what? Maybe it was their approach. Again, I gave them every opportunity to engage beforehand, but they wanted their little show. And everybody stood there and got it. It won't be long before they come after you. They'll come after Tia. They'll come after everybody that speaks out against them. And then it'll just be, all that'll be left is the Patrick Horn and the rest of the yes men. You'll have the assistant safety service director sitting in the back, watching over everything, making sure that everything goes the way that they want it to go. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying. The Constitution anticipates friction between citizens and the state, right? It protects speech precisely because the government does not always enjoy being questioned, right? It keeps them from using their authority against you. Kind of like they're doing now. So when they say you're instigating the police, I'm like, the word instigating is quite being used very loosely. And instigation in a legal sense implies provoking unlawful action. or encouraging misconduct. Asking a police chief to take a report is not instigation, it's invoking duty. Quoting statutory authority is not instigation, it's referencing law. Filming public officials in a public building is not instigation, it's protected activity. Tone may be uncomfortable. Volume may be elevated. Speech may be critical. But discomfort is not criminality. The Supreme Court long recognized that verbal criticism and challenge directed at police officers is protected speech. An officer's irritation does not convert protected speech into unlawful investigation. And then now it's you're instigating the safety service director. Well, the same accusation is directed at my interactions with Ray. The claim is that by questioning him like a news person would, like, oh, Mr. President, what do you have to say to this? By simply being present in a hallway or by speaking critically, somehow I instigated a confrontation. I just asked questions. You'll answer her questions, but not mine. That was true. He walked right past me multiple times, asked him and the mayor, and they just ignored me. But presence in a public hallway outside the council meeting is lawful. I can be there. He can be there. We could all be there. Question a public official about public matters, that's lawful too. Recording that interaction is lawful. Recording him and Carissa was lawful. Speech alone does not justify physical contact. Speech alone does not justify exclusion from public property. And speech alone does not justify an indefinite ban. If raising questions about government decisions is redefined as instigation, the accountability itself becomes misconduct. Now, there's a pattern in these accusations. Notice where these criticisms they all share. They do not engage with the underlying legal question. They focus on personality, who it is, the tone, the irritation. They treat assertiveness as aggression. They treat statutory citation as obsession. And they treat persistent oversight as harassment. None of that answers the structural issue. Was the ban authorized by statute? Was due process provided before enforcement? Was there a neutral adjudication before exclusion? No. Were complaints properly documented? Were the legal and those are legal questions, right? So were the complaints properly documented? Those are legal questions. They are answered by law, not by whether someone finds ORC citations annoying. When people say all you do is quote ORC, the honest response is simple. When the government acts, the law is exactly what should be quoted. Period. All right, that's going to get us to a section in here where we talk about the chief, the supervisory liability, and why this is not just following orders. But we're going to take another quick break here because we're at the halfway mark of this hour. And before we start this next chapter, this one's a good one. It's going to be all about Chief Fowling, why he's not a bystander, and how he and these other people violated civil rights, and that's going to be problematic for them because it's going to cost them their jobs possibly under 1983 violations. It's possible that they could lose their qualified immunity. So we're going to play another video for you real quick, and then we'll be right.
Aaron, let's go.
Right here? Okay, that was a
Sorry, right here.
All I needed was them to do what they were going to do. Look at all these people here. Hi, Tony. Appreciate you guys for my government.
shot then.
So we didn't go back
All right, well, that was our next in the line of videos that we're playing tonight. Let's get into discussing Mr. Fouling. So, we're going to talk about the chief, supervisory liability, and why this was not just, quote, following orders on behalf of the chief. Now, Chief Michael Fouling is not just a bystander in this story, right? He's not insulated from it simply because the ban letter originated from the safety service side of the building. Nah, that's not how this works. And I know you guys hate that I know this, but I don't really care. The chief is the supervisory law enforcement official for the city. And the moment his officers are deployed to a public entrance to deny a citizen access to a public meeting under threat of arrest, that becomes a police action under color of law. Let that sink in. Because in civil rights terms, it's not the paper alone that creates the liability, folks. It's the enforcement of the paper through the badge, the uniform, the threat of arrest, and the physical control of a government doorway. And that's why this is not some he said, she said about an administrative letter. It is a documented deployment of police authority to implement an indefinite exclusion from public government space. The key fact that locks the chief into this, like the whole record, is the notice. I did not just show up unannounced. I emailed him and everyone multiple times and they didn't respond. That was their chosen form of communication, as Jackass McCann used to say. They made it, I emailed them, I made it explicit I was going to attend that March 2nd meeting as press. That was not a request for permission, and any inference, really must be supported by a specific lawful justification. I then followed with additional emails, making it very clear again that the city had ignored repeated communications, and I stated in writing that their silence would be treated as tacit approval for me to attend, while also reminding them that they would need to explicitly and legally ask me to leave to satisfy the required process. Love the word tacit approval. I got that from my ex. So I'm standing by, you get tacit approval. It's a good one. This matters because it defeats the later claim that this is some sort of misunderstanding, a surprise, or the spontaneous operational decision on behalf of the police. They were warned. They were put on notice. The chief was in an email chain. Then my attorney emailed Fouling directly, formally requesting that my constitutional rights be protected while I exercised under the First Amendment of the Ohio Constitution to participate in and report upon local governance occurring at City Hall. That's not a casual message. That is my lawyer telling the chief in his official capacity in writing and in advance of a public meeting that's been announced that the city is on the edge of a civil rights liability if it blocks access and intimidates a journalist. The chief's reply is equally important because it shows the intent and policy choice, not confusion. He made his choice. The chief wrote in substance that it was his understanding that the safety service director's order remained in place until the matter was resolved in court, quote, as Mr. Knapp requested, end quote. I didn't request. I had no alternative. And that's like saying, the guy asked to fall on his face. No, you dropped him on it. Well, I guess I went that way. But that framing is loaded, right? It attempts to convert my court challenge into an excuse for a continued enforcement of this unlawful, unconstitutional ban, as if requesting judicial review somehow validates an indefinite restriction that he should know better and authorizes police to treat it like an active criminal trespass order before any judge's rule. They have nothing. The position is not legally risky, right? Just legally risky, I should say. It's operationally reckless because it turns the police department into the enforcement arm of an administrative punishment that has not been adjudicated. If the order is unconstitutional, or if it's overbroad, or if it lacks due process, then the decision to enforce it anyway becomes the decision that creates the exposure for the whole city. In other words, the chief's email doesn't protect him It documents his reasoning, and that reasoning can be tested for objective reasonableness. It's one thing to say, I received a court order. It's another thing to say, I received an email, and I will enforce that email with arrest threats until a judge stops me. It's an email, folks. That's precisely the kind of posture that ends up expensive, because it's the posture that turns uncertainty into a constitutional deprivation. That's where he shows his greenness as a chief. He's obviously not good at public speaking and thinking on his feet. So when you look at it from the standpoint of, I can't even believe that he made that decision. It's just, unbelievable. This is also where their department policy becomes relevant, because I looked at it. It clearly says, that I'll have to look. This is where department policy becomes relevant, as not as a talking point, but as an internal standard for the officers that are actually trained on. The Lorain Police Department Policy Manual, which I had to fight to get from Chief McCann and Mr. Levesque, which finally is posted online for anyone to see, has a section on public recording and supervising citizen encounters where recording is involved. It emphasizes that directions to citizens should be specific enough to allow compliance, and it instructs supervisors to take lead role in communication, and critically, to ensure enforcement actions are consistent with department policy and constitutional and state law. That's not a radical proposition. It's police professionalism in plain language, right? And when a supervisor is on scene, the manual's expectation is not simply control, but constitutional control, meaning the supervisor has an affirmative responsibility to prevent enforcement actions that cannot be defended under the Constitution. If the supervisor believes that an order is unlawful, the supervisor should be able to explain why it is lawful. Or if they believe it's lawful, then they should be able to explain why it's lawful. If a supervisor cannot explain why it's lawful, then the supervisor should hesitate before turning it into an arrest posture. So, hold on a second. Before I get into this next part, I just want to see what that question looks like. I don't know. He was being a little crybaby. I don't know. He come hustling out there, though. Oh, he's here. I mean, hurry. Now, let's talk about Mr. Thompson, Tim Thompson at the door, and every other officer present at that door, because none of them were rookies walking in a fog, right? I asked a direct question of this lieutenant, captain, whatever he is, and I asked whether I was considered trespass. And I asked whether I would be arrested if I attempted to enter. Those questions were answered in the affirmative. He said yes. And that is the moment the situation stops being vague and becomes a defined threat of criminal enforcement. If a person has actually been criminally trespassed through a lawful process, i.e. court, the officer can point to the basis. If the person has been charged, the officer can cite the case or in the incident report. If there's a court order, the officer can reference it. But here, the city's own framing, as reflected in the, quote, caution language that they've used, in the absence of any criminal charges, utmost caution, I think they said, it is that this was an administrative order. That was it. So the enforcement, however, was criminal in posture because it relied on the threat of arrest to compel compliance. Once they threatened to arrest me, I was out. This is where we, where, quote, we were just following orders comes down and collapses as a defense, right? And that's what the Nazis said, too. Just following orders, man. Just doing what I was told. I saw a video the other day where someone was talking. It was law enforcement. Was talking to somebody, and the guy was saying law enforcement was talking to me. He was friends with somebody or knew him, and he was like, well, would you, enforce an unconstitutional law or a law that you knew to be unconstitutional just because you were told to by a supervisor? Well, he goes, well, I wouldn't call it outright, kind of an attitude, because I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to get in trouble. Like, that's the mentality of most people. You're a problem. You're the problem. You're the problem. Why? Because I'm not with the status quo, because I don't go with the flow, because I don't do what everybody wants me to do. But this is, where following orders collapses the defense, both morally and professionally. Police officers are not trained to follow any order, any more than the military is. They are trained to follow lawful orders, lawful orders, lawful orders. The LPD policy language about First Amendment context reinforces that distinction in plain terms. LPD's own manual, says monitoring escalation only when there is a legal basis and lawful orders are refused. That principle is straightforward. If an officer is going to order a citizen to disperse, remove, or comply, that order has to be lawful in the first place. If the quote order being enforced is an indefinite ban from public property without due process and without a clear neutral framework, well, then the legality is not automatic simply because someone in the city administration like Tim typed it up on a computer. Again, congratulations, Tim. Bravo for typing. You're amazing. What we waste our tax dollars on? My tax dollars went to him typing me a letter on city administration letterhead. None of the officers can credibly say they lacked warning that this was constitutionally sensitive. I told them. They were warned. They were warned because the city warned them. They were warned because the chief was warned. They were warned because my, counsel was in the chain. My lawyer explicitly invoking First Amendment rights and a warning against intimidation or threats while attending city council meetings. So by the time officers stood there at that door, the chief waiting, this was not a routine building security question. This was known constitutional conflict with pending litigation they were aware of and a hearing date they were aware of. And that makes the decision to enforce the ban with police power, more consequential, not less. In civil liability terms, the chief's role matters because supervisors can be held liable for and accountable when they knowingly authorize, condone, or direct actions that deprive a person of constitutional rights. More so than anyone else in that room, he is the head honcho. Then you start going down the roll from rank to rank to rank, and the higher the rank, the worse the punishment. Even when a lawsuit ultimately targets the city itself, the chief's email response and deployment of the officers and the on-scene decisions are the facts that determine whether this becomes a municipal policy problem, a supervisory problem, or both. If the city's position is that the safety service director's order remains in place and therefore police must block entry, that's not an isolated officer mistake. That's policy level decision implemented by the police department. That is the kind of fact pattern that can create municipal exposure. Because it looks like a deliberate practice, not a split judgment, second judgment. It was deliberate. If the city wanted to minimize exposure, the rational approach would have been to respond to the emails like they said they would, provide a clear written process, offer a content-neutral pathway for meeting access pending court review, and avoid turning an unadjudicated administrative letter into a threatened arrest at the door of a public meeting. Instead, the chief acknowledged the attorney's email, treated the pending court challenge as justification for continued enforcement, and positioned the department to implement the ban as if it carried the force of a lawful judicial trespass order, which it didn't. And that's the part of this story that belongs in the podcast right here now, because, it's where the incident becomes more than one official being petty to me. I love that word when I'm talking about, I got petty friends and I'm a petty's puppet, but this becomes a police department agreeing with the mechanism of exclusion. Finally, I want to be crystal clear about this point I'm making because people love to pretend the argument is emotional. It's not. The point is structural. The police can be used to enforce indefinite administrative bans from public meetings without due process. Then every citizen's access becomes conditional on executive comfort. How long before you upset someone and you're removed? That's the opposite of constitutional government. That the chief had notice, the officers had notice, the command staff had notice. And when you have notice that a constitutional right is being asserted and your response is to post up with 6 officers and threaten arrest, you're not neutral, baby. You're choosing a side. And that choice is exactly what creates the whole level of accountability. And a lot of people don't understand, right, why it matters. It matters because it's not about personality. It's not about whether someone likes my tone. It's not about whether people think I'm annoying, aggressive, or persistent. It's not about even whether I cuss or not. You may not like my language. Sorry, I got a bunch of TBIs and you guys keep trying to give me more by assaulting me. Civil rights do not depend on popularity contests. Thank God. The First Amendment, the First Amendment does not require a majority of approval, right? Due process does not evaporate because a comment section chooses to ridicule over legal analysis. Constitutional protections are designed to function precisely when speech is unpopular or inconvenient, when you don't like it, when it's very uncomfortable. That's what it's supposed to protect. The real issue is structural. The question is whether an executive official can issue an indefinite exclusion from public property without defined standards, without a prior hearing, without criminal charge, and then enforce that exclusion under threat of arrest. This is not a personality dispute, folks. This is a separation of powers question and a due process question, and it asks whether administrative authority can substitute for judicial review when liberty interests are at risk and implicated. If your answer is yes, then constitutional limits become optional, dependent on the discretion of whoever holds office at the moment, right? If your answer is no, then judicial intervention is not so dramatic or political. It's actually necessary. The courts exist to determine whether the government action fits within the legal boundaries. That's their role. That's the same role Bradley said I had to appeal this, even though he didn't give me the avenue for it. I had to seek it out on my own. Most people would have been stymied by what he said. They're mad that I didn't. But hey, that's their role when executive action collides with protected rights. The courts are supposed to be there to, guide us. And there's also a financial dimension that cannot be ignored. Enforcement of unconstitutional policies under color of law exposes municipality to liability under 42 U.S.C. 1983. That statute allows individuals to seek relief when constitutional rights are violated by government actors. If a court finds that rights were infringed, potential exposure includes damages, injunctive relief, and attorney fees. Even if the municipality ultimately prevails, defending such litigation consumes taxpayer resources, which arguably I've already done a lot of that. The decision to enforce an unreviewed executive ban while multiple officers present is not merely symbolic. It carries fiscal risk along with legal risk. It matters because constitutional government is not about personalities. It's about process, due process. It's about whether power is exercised within defined limits. It's about whether the government follows the same legal structure it expects citizens to obey. It's about when access to public property is restricted and enforcement is threatened. The justification must rest on law, not irritation, not optics, and not administrative convenience. But the core issue still remains, folks. You strip away the tone of the arguments, you strip away the personality of the debates, you strip away the noise from the comment section and the peanut gallery, and what remains is the central constitutional question that anybody that's ever watched an auditor video understands how this plays out every time. And it hasn't changed from the beginning. Question is, can a citizen be denied access to a public building and a public meeting without a clear, lawful, content-neutral basis and without prior adjudication? That's the axis of the entire dispute, folks. City Hall is not a private property in the ordinary sense. Council chambers are not invitation only. These are public institutions funded by the taxpayer and structured for the public. They're structured for public participation, for God's sakes. When access to those spaces is restricted indefinitely by an executive letter from a low-level thug like, Tim Williams, and backed by threat of arrest by a high-level thug like Mr. Fowling, the legal authority for the restriction must be clear, specific, and neutral, not implied, not assumed, not retroactively justified, but clear. There was no crime charged against me. Even the paper says that. There were no charges filed. The paper says that. There was no citation issues. No arrest. Papers say that. There was no criminal complaint initiated against me, period. There was no judicial finding of trespass, no disorderly conduct, or assault, period. There was no police report documenting that I committed a criminal offense on February 16th. Yet an indefinite exclusion backed by the threat of arrest was enforced. Now, if exclusion from public property is not based on a criminal charge, then what's it based on? What written policy authorized it? Who defined standards were applied? What findings were made? Where is the adjudication? And this cannot be separated from what happened on October 20th, because on October 20th, during an ongoing council meeting, I filed a complaint alleging misconduct by that same guy, Ray Carrion. That complaint, to my knowledge, has never been adjudicated. I know it because I asked them about it, and they said it takes time. No written findings were issued. No formal resolution was communicated. The matter was described as under review, and it remains unresolved. The city has failed and continues to fail to address that complaint in any transparent or documented way. So the sequence becomes critical because I filed the complaint in October. It's still not adjudicated. No findings are issued. Months pass. Another confrontation happens. So I file another complaint. No charges are filed against me. No reports taken on scene. I'm barred from City Hall. No crime, no charges, no adjudication, no resolution of the prior complaint. Instead, an executive exclusion. If a police chief enforces that exclusion while court challenge is pending, what oversight ensures neutrality? When enforcement precedes adjudication, the executive branch acts first, and the citizen must fight to regain access. That is a structural inversion of due process, the exact opposite. If a city ignores written attempts to resolve the matter through communication and through formal court filings, what procedural safeguards remain? If emails go unanswered and legal process is met with silence while enforcement proceeds, what becomes of the opportunity to be heard component of that due process thing that they're denying me? Those questions still remain unanswered. They're not addressed by insults. They're not resolved by mockery. They're not neutralized by name calling or calling me annoying. The law does not disappear because the comment section laughs at me. Constitutional protections do not just magically evaporate because criticism is loud. Structure does not collapse because people are irritated. The core issue remains as this: can executive officials remove a citizen from public property indefinitely without a crime, without charges, without any sort of adjudication or any sort of methodology, while unresolved complaints against the official remain unaddressed? The answer is yes, then constitutional limits are optional. Say fuck it, right? The answer is no, then the court must say so. That's the issue. Not changed. You know. All right, we're getting here close to the end here. I want to play. Well, we got 10 more minutes. I'm going to do this next section before we move on and play another video, and then we'll be getting to the end. With the documentation I looked up, I did some research on win-loss outcomes in these scenarios. So when people talk about situations like this, the discussion often becomes emotional real quick. Supporters and critics argue about personalities, tone, or whether someone should simply move on. Those, reactions are predictable, but they miss the part that actually matters. What matters is the record of litigation shows when municipalities attempt to ban individual citizens from public property or public funds. To understand that, I assembled documentation from reported cases, federal court cases and decisions, and credible news sources involving municipal exclusion orders. These are situations where a city attempted to bar a citizen from a public building, a council meeting, or another municipal building, and the citizen challenged that exclusion, in court. And what emerges from that research is not a clear victory for cities and is not a clear victory for citizens. It shows that these cases frequently turn into significant constitutional disputes with very real legal consequences and costs. I mean, imagine if they had just settled this for what I asked for initially, a handshake. Even if they settled it for $50, they already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to these lawyers of our tax dollars defending these cases that they could have just solved right out the door by doing the right thing. Across the cases reviewed, though, roughly a dozen disputes involved direct bans on citizens from municipal spaces or civic forums. When the outcomes are examined, approximately 60% of those cases ended in some form of victory for the citizen who brought the challenge. In some instances, courts struck down the ban outright. In others, the citizen prevailed through settlement or injunctive relief. In a smaller number of cases, the city successfully defended the exclusion. In one of them, it was a no-brainer. I don't know if I've got it in here, but the dude basically got in a fight at a city pool and then tried to argue it was constitutionally inappropriate for him to be banned from the pool. I'm like, no, dude, you got in a fight at the pool. Like, there's no constitutional forum at the pool. That's not considered the pool is not a traditional public forum. The distribution matters, though, because it shows that municipal bans are far from automatically valid. They are contested often. They are frequently overturned when courts determine that the exclusion interfered with constitutional rights. So one of the clearest examples of a citizen victory occurred in Missouri. In Varney v. Citizen of Edgar Springs, a resident who had criticized city officials was barred from City Hall for several years. The dispute eventually reached the court, and when the judge concluded that the town's actions violated open government protections and the citizens' rights to participate in public affairs, the result was a judgment awarding approximately $80,000 in damages and costs. For a small municipality, that's huge. That's a huge financial consequence. There was another one in Florida, McDonough versus City of Homestead. A citizen had been critical of city leadership was removed from a council meeting and then permanently banned from attending future meetings. The case made its way to the United States Court of Appeals in the 11th Circuit, sitting en banc, and the court held that the city council meeting was a limited public forum, meaning restrictions on participation must both be reasonable and viewpoint neutral. Because the ban appeared tied to the plaintiff's criticism of officials, the court concluded that the exclusion could violate the First Amendment and returned the case for further proceedings. That decision reinforced an important constitutional principle. When government opens a forum for public participation, it cannot exclude speakers simply because officials dislike the viewpoint being expressed. There are also cases where municipalities have successfully defended them. The most frequently cited one is Kennedy v. City of Cincinnati. In that case, though, this is the one. This is why I would argue always against it. Be like, yeah, please use Kennedy v. Cincinnati. The case where a resident was banned from a municipal swimming pool after an altercation at the facility. So you got in a fight with somebody at the pool. The Sixth Circuit ultimately ruled in favor of the city, finding that the plaintiff did not possess a protected liberty interest in access to the recreational facility. Because the case involved a government service rather than a forum for political expression, as I was saying, the constitutional analysis was very different from cases involving public meetings or civic participation. That distinction highlights why these disputes are so specific and fact-specific. A recreational facility, a public park, a city council chamber are not treated the same under constitutional law. When speech and public participation are involved, courts apply a much more demanding standard. The financial consequences of these cases can be also significant. Even when a municipality ultimately prevails, defending federal civil rights lawsuits can easily cost tens of thousands of dollars. Litigation that proceeds through discovery and appeal can reach well into six figures. When a city loses, the financial exposure increases further because federal civil rights statutes allow prevailing plaintiffs to recover attorney fees in addition to damages. And you can bet my attorney's going to be involved in that. I'm not doing that pro se. A recent settlement in Los Angeles illustrates how quickly those numbers can escalate. In that case, journalists sued the city after being arrested while covering protests. Although the dispute did not involve a ban from city property, it arose under the same constitutional framework governing government interference with First Amendment activity. The city ultimately agreed to pay $500,000 to resolve the claims. Those examples demonstrate why municipalities typically approach exclusion orders cautiously. What may begin as a local administrative decision can evolve into a federal civil rights case with substantial financial implications. They just don't care in Lorain. They don't mind spending your money on me. Several additional lawsuits are currently working their way through the courts. In Florida, journalist Andrew Sheets filed federal actions after being issued trespass warnings that barred him from public events. His lawsuits allege that retaliation for protected speech and violations of procedural due process. The courts have already allowed those claims to proceed beyond the initial dismissal stage, meaning the litigation will now move forward into discovery and potential trial. In Texas, another case involving a citizen banned from a public plaza after filming police activity has also survived early motions for dismissal. The court concluded that there was enough evidence to allow the First Amendment claim to proceed, particularly because the exclusion appeared connected to the act of recording law enforcement officers. Taken together with these cases reveal a pattern that is impossible to ignore. When exclusion orders intersect with political speech, public meetings, or criticism of government officials, courts scrutinize them very carefully. Municipalities sometimes prevail, particularly when the exclusion is based on genuine safety concerns or misconduct unrelated to speech. But when the ban appears connected to the content of citizen speech or the criticism of the officials, Courts frequently intervene. The win-loss record reflects that reality. Citizen plaintiffs succeed more often than many people assume. And when they do not, or when they do succeed, the financial consequences can be significant. The documentation does not determine how any particular case will end, but every dispute has its own facts, its own evidence, its own legal arguments. What the documentation does show, however, is that exclusion orders are rarely the simple administrative solutions they appear to be at the moment they are issued. They are often the beginning of litigation rather than the end of a conflict. And once that litigation begins, the ultimate decision is not about who was right is no longer made by administrators, police departments, or comment sections. It's made by the courts applying constitutional law. All right, that brings us to the top of the hour. I have one last little section on the city's recent filings, and then we're going to talk about my final closing remarks. But in the meantime, we're going to play our next video. Let's see, what did we play last time? So we played that one. Did we play that one? I think we did.
Going? I'd rather not get a weapon.
Well, I do. I got a bunch of stuff in there.
Oh, okay.
How's your son-in-law and daughter?
Good.
Good.
I think.
Trespass?
You're under threat of arrest? Yes. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
It's on you. Thank you. I appreciate it. The lawsuit's going to be amazing.
Come on,
Hey,
Garen.
Garen. No,
Garen.
Let's go. Garen, let's go. Garen, come on. We got what we need.
Garen, let's go.
Let's go.
You want to take this water in there?
Just walk in that way.
Your son-in-law and daughter?
Wow, all these people from me? Okay, on my trespass?
Yes. Is he trespassed?
You're under threat of arrest? Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Well, I got to have SWAT here.
I appreciate it. The lawsuit's going to be amazing.
Oh, you're Tim Thompson? Are you Tim Thompson? Today is March the 2nd.
I'm going to just hand you this. Right here. Wow, all these people from me? Okay, on my trespass?
Yes. Is he trespassed?
You're under threat of arrest?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Well, I got to have SWAT here.
I appreciate it. The lawsuit's going to be amazing.
Oh, you're Tim Thompson? Are you Tim Thompson? Thompson.
Aaron, please listen to me. I got all I needed. We're leaving.
Yeah, we're leaving.
Look at all these people here. Hi, Tony. Appreciate you guys for my government. Let's go. Come on. Let's go. Come on. Come on.
Let's go.
Let's go. Come on.
I'm going. Go ahead.
I just sent an email to Gargis too.
What'd you tell him, Chief?
About what?
He sent an email about you coming here.
What'd you tell him?
I just sent it. You got it. I'm just
No, I'm in school. You guys are violating my civil rights right now, so I just want you to be aware of that, right?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Public
Goodbye.
building.
Goodbye.
Let's go.
I'm gonna look. All right.
Well, there was the three videos that I had queued up to play. I'm gonna get this last section here going. So the city has attempted to delay judicial review. This is a little piece that I'm adding tonight. I got the email from Mr. Bowles today, the redheaded stranger. So the city attempted to delay judicial review in another important development in this case. In the city's recent attempt to delay the court hearing, boy, this coat. Whew. That's scheduled to address the legality of the exclusion order. The city of Lorain, or Attorney Bowles, along with several officials named as defendants, filed a motion today asking for Lorain County Court of Common Pleas to postpone the hearing on the request for a temporary restraining order. Now, according to the filing, the city argued that the continuance was necessary because, quote, a crucial witness would not be available on the scheduled date. The motion was asked to delay the March 5th court date hearing by several days so that witnesses could appear. Well, the motion for continuance on its face, that may sound like a routine procedure request, right? But the courts regularly grant continuances when witnesses are unavailable. But the context of this case is what makes the request significant. The hearing the city sought to delay is not about damages or discovery. It's an active constitutional restraint that's currently being enforced upon yours truly. So the exclusion order issued by the city bars the plaintiff, or me, from all municipal properties until further notice and warns that violation of that directive could result in arrest. The order was not issued by a judge. It was issued by Tim Williams. Jesus, that is more embarrassing than anything. I got banned by Tim fucking Williams. Jesus Christ. It's like, dude, follow the Yellow Brick Road. I'm sorry. Listen, no court hearing, no due process. It was issued administratively by Tim Williams and enforced by the police, by our chief, by a lieutenant or captain, Mr. Tim Thompson, who argued initially had engagement with me back when he was with under Chief McCann, and he lied about me he stated to McCann I've been trespassed from numerous public buildings. So he took amazing joy in doing that. I wasn't going to give them their enforcement moment, right? I mean, again, when the chief came out, he was, you can't really see it unless you look close, but I wanted to walk him and go, but I think he would have got me for assault on that one. But, he could tell you, all of them were, they're all amped up. I don't know what they thought was going to happen. They were hoping for I need ID, and then beep, beep, beep. He's resisting. Stop resisting. He's unconscious. But when a plaintiff, listen, my memorandum of opposition is what I filed, right? That distinction matters because the purpose of a temporary restraining order is to address exactly this type of situation. When a plaintiff alleges that the government action is currently violating constitutional rights, courts typically move quickly to evaluate that claim. Delay is not neutral when the alleged constitutional violation is ongoing. That's the problem for them. The opposition filing that they submitted to the court today makes that point kind of directly. It argues that postponing the hearing, well, I haven't filed it yet, but I will be. But it argues that postponing the hearing would be effectively extending the exclusion that's already being challenged. So in other words, if the court delays the hearing while the ban remains in place, the alleged constitutional injury continues during the delay period. So in my memorandum of opposition, it relies on well-established constitutional precedent for that argument. The United States Supreme Court has long recognized that even short-term deprivation of First Amendment freedoms constitutes irreparable harm, as I've said throughout this whole podcast. The filing specifically cites Elrod v. Burns, where the court stated that the loss of First Amendment rights for even minimal periods of time is a serious injury, a constitutional injury. And the opposition also challenges the factual basis of the city's request for a delay. The motion for continuance, it doesn't even identify the person that, the absence of who the witness is. And it allegedly justifies that the postponement doesn't explain the nature of the testimony. And it does not provide any affidavit establishing why the testimony is even necessary. And without that information, the court really has limited ability to evaluate anything, whether the delay is justified or not. The memorandum, therefore, is going to argue that the request fails to meet the standards set by the Ohio Supreme Court. I'm not even going to quote all this stuff because I don't want to give away all my strategy. But the filing also points out practical inconsistencies in their position. Public statements from city officials indicate that if the exclusion was challenged, the dispute should be resolved in court. That was Mayor Bradley in the paper. The plaintiff I did exactly that by filing a lawsuit like they asked me to and seeking judicial review. It's not a lawsuit really. It's just I'm asking for a temporary protection order to keep them from enforcing this, keeping me out of City Hall. But beyond the procedural arguments, the memorandum raises a broader constitutional concern about the scope of the exclusion order itself. The order bars access to all municipal properties. That language that potentially encompasses a wide range of locations, including traditional public forums such as sidewalks, parks, and well-designated public forums like council chambers during public meetings. Constitutional law treats those spaces differently. Restrictions in public forums must satisfy strict constitutional standards, particularly when speech or political participation is involved. Now, the filing argues that a sweeping citywide exclusion imposes without defined limits, without a specified duration, and without a mechanism for review raises serious constitutional concerns. They know it, I know it. According to the memorandum that I'm going to write, or that I've written already pretty much, the breadth of the order underscores why prompt judicial review is necessary rather than delay. In practical terms, dispute over the continuance is more about than just scheduling, right? It reflects two different views about how constitutional disputes should be handled. One view treats the exclusion as an administrative matter and can remain in place while litigation slowly unfolds, as Bowles would like to have it, kind of like his personality. The other argues that when the government restricts access to public civic spaces without prior judicial authorization, courts must examine the legality of the action quickly. Now that's the question before the court, and its resolution will shape what happens next, right? So when you look at that all municipal properties language, it's super dangerous for them legally. When governments attempt to regulate conduct based in public buildings, the law generally permits reasonable rules. Cities can force decorum in council chambers. They can remove individuals who disrupt meetings and enforce criminal law inside public facilities. Those powers are well established. What becomes legally dangerous for a municipality is when the restriction stops being about a specific location or incident and instead becomes a sweeping exclusion from public property as a whole, which is what they've done here. The phrase all municipal properties, all municipal buildings, all the king's men, couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, is where the danger begins. Municipal property is not a single type of or place of under constitutional law, right? It's a collection of a different type of public forums, each governed by different legal standards. The Supreme Court's repeatedly explained that the government cannot treat every public forum and space the same when speech rights are involved. Courts instead divide public property into several categories: traditional public forums, designated public forums, and non-public forums. Traditional public forums include sidewalks, parks, public plazas. They're places where speech and civic engagement have historically occurred. It's in these spaces that the government's ability to restrict speech is extremely limited, and restriction must be narrowly tailored and justified by compelling government interest. Designated public forums are spaces that the government has intentionally opened for public participation. A city council chamber during a public meeting is a classic example. Citizens are invited to speak, question officials, and participate in local governance. Once the government opens such a forum, it cannot exclude speakers simply because the official dislikes the viewpoint being expressed. Restrictions must be reasonable and viewpoint neutral. Non-public forums include administrative offices or internal workspaces where the government may impose broader restrictions, like that door that Ray could have taken his little girl through and had the interview there. Him and Carissa could have gone back there and shut the door. But even in those locations, however, restrictions must be reasonable and cannot be used as retaliation for protected speech. The problem with the phrase all municipal properties, right? That's a problem. It collapses these different categories into one single box and one single blanket restriction. And a single administrative order suddenly covers sidewalks, parks, government offices, meeting rooms, and other property owned by the city. Under constitutional law, that kind of broad exclusion immediately raises red flags. They could even mean my tree line. Federal courts have repeatedly cautioned against these sweeping bans that remove citizens from large portions of public civic life. And the reason's simple. When the government bans a person from an entire category of public spaces, the restriction begins to resemble what courts call a prior restraint on speech. Remember that, a prior restraint on speech. Remember that, a prior restraint on speech. You really should try to remember that, a prior restraint on speech. That's what the courts call it, a prior restraint on speech. So, if you have something that basically tells people that, you can't go into any of these spaces and speak, it becomes what they call a prior restraint on speech. And it's no longer regulating conduct in a specific location, right? It's preventing the individual from participating in public discourse altogether. The danger becomes even more pronounced when the restriction is indefinite. I mean, basically what they told anybody there was, if you disagree with us, we're going to remove you from this place. A ban with no clear duration by Tim Williams, unconstitutionally. No defined boundaries, unconstitutionally. And no formal review process effectively created an administrative exile from civic participation, intentionally. Courts are extremely skeptical of restrictions that operate in that way. Another issue that arises from the doctrine of overbreadth is constitutional law requires that restrictions affecting speech be narrowly tailored to address the specific harm the government claims to be preventing. If a city concerns involves conduct in one building, banning the individual from every municipal property in the city is rarely considered a narrowly tailored response. Courts often ask the simple question in these cases, could the government have addressed the situation in a more limited restriction? If that answer is yes, the broader ban becomes difficult to defend. This is why many municipalities that attempt sweeping exclusions eventually narrow them or rescind them once litigation begins. The broader the language of the restriction, the more likely it is to collide with the First Amendment. And their shit's broad as hell. And with the constitutional protections that govern access to public forums is what they're looked at. In practical terms, the phrase all municipal properties may appear administratively convenient, but legally it creates exposure. Good job, Tim Williams. Ignorant. Hercules. Yeah, whatever, Tim. You're brilliant, bro. You wrote the most boring letter I've ever seen, too. Like, no emotion behind it. You're Van Bueller, banned from all municipal property, Bueller. You, Tim Williams. In practical terms, when he did that, he messed up because that's a broad attempt to silence a particular individual, yours truly. And once that question reaches the courtroom, the analysis shifts from administrative discretion on Tim's part, their scapegoat, to constitutional scrutiny. That's where these disputes become far more serious for the municipality involved, right? So I kind of did a little scape up here of how this might move through the system. Now, civil rights litigation rarely ends. I've read a lot of these cases lately. Jesus. My attorney sends them to me. I subscribe to the Supreme Court's litigation list. So I get these emails that have the most recent court hearings. And I'm an inquisitive natured person, so I read them. I've read so many appeals, so many cases, so much case law. It feels normal to know this stuff. But I know this is not everyone's cup of tea. Like, it's some boring ass shit. A lot of it's the same stuff, law in itself is just plagiarism. These people are, well, what's the standard? Well, we're going to quote this and then we're going to fucking just like they did it. That's how it's expected to be done. There's a right way and then there's the right way. Because the wrong way leads you to be not being in doing any litigation ever. Cases involving constitutional questions often move through several stages of review, though. What happens is they each one adds a different layer of legal analysis. Understanding that path really kind of helps explain why disputes like this can ultimately reach the highest courts of the land, or at least in the state. The first stage is the trial court itself, where we're at now. In this case, that form is Lorain County Court of Common Pleas. The court will evaluate the immediate request before it, including whether a temporary restraining order or a preliminary injunction should be issued. At this stage, the judge does not determine every legal question in the case. Instead, the court focuses on whether the plaintiff has shown a likelihood of success on the merits and whether immediate relief is necessary to prevent irreparable harm. If the court grants or denies preliminary relief, that decision can sometimes be appealed immediately, depending on how the court order is structured. So otherwise, the case continues through the normal litigation process. The stage may include discovery, motions to dismiss, summary judgment, motions, potentially a trial if factual disputes remain unresolved. Once the trial court issues a final judgment, the losing party has the right to appeal the appropriate district court of appeals. For cases originating in Lorain County, that would be the 9th. The 9th District Court of Appeals is located in Medina. The appellate court does not retry the case. Instead, it reviews the legal decisions made by the trial court to determine whether the law was applied correctly. Appellate courts pay particular attention to the constitutional issues. Questions involving the First Amendment, procedural due process, or the scope of government authority are often reviewed carefully because this affects not just the parties involved, but the legal standards applied in future cases. If the 9th District issues a decision, the next step becomes discretionary review by the Ohio Supreme Court. Unlike the trial court, then the intermediate appellate court, the state's highest court does not hear every case presented. Parties must file a jurisdictional memorandum asking the court to accept the appeal. The justices then decide whether the case presents issues of public or constitutional importance that warrant review. Cases involving the government authority and constitutional rights frequently attract the attention of the Ohio Supreme Court, because particularly when the dispute involves statewide implications or unresolved legal questions, when a case raises issues about the limits of municipal power, access to public forums, or the scope of administrative exclusion orders, those questions can resonate far beyond the individual dispute. So if the Ohio Supreme Court accepts the jurisdiction, then the case moves into a new phase involving full briefing and oral argument before the justices. I've been from the state of Idaho's Supreme Court twice. I can take it all the way to there, no problem. Pro se. The court's decision then becomes binding precedent. So across the state, meaning every municipality, every lower court must follow that legal rule announced in the opinion. There's also one additional possibility. When a case involves federal constitutional rights, it can eventually reach the federal court system as well. Some disputes proceed simultaneously in state and federal courts, depending on the claims asserted. Others reach the federal courts through a separate civil rights action under 42 U.S.C. 1983. Little hint, we're going to go there next. That layered system of review is not accidental. The American legal structure is designed so the disputes involving government authority are examined repeatedly through multiple levels of judicial oversight. Each stage allows higher courts to clarify the law and ensure that the constitutional protections are being applied consistently. For cases involving access to public forums and limits to government power, those appellate stages are often become where the most significant legal questions are ultimately resolved. And once a case enters the appellate path, right, the conversation moves far beyond a single incident or a single building. It becomes a legal question about the boundaries of government authority itself. All right, that brings us to our final thought. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. The record in this matter doesn't rest on rumor, speculation, or reaction. It rests on documentation that's already been submitted through formal channels. Sworn filings have been made, evidence has been preserved, notice has been provided to the appropriate officials. The matter has been placed before the judicial system for review. That's the structure for the Constitution provides when disputes arise between citizens and government authority. And that structure exists precisely so that these questions of power and accountability are not decided by personal preference or administrative convenience. So if law enforcement or municipal officials determine that no corrective action is necessary, that decision ultimately belongs to them. Government actors possess discretion in how they respond to allegations and complaints. What they do does not control what they do not control. Sorry, I'm not saying that right. What they do not control is the existence of the record itself. So when you elevate your voice, sometimes it sounds like you're in it. Like, once documentation exists in elite notes, once documentation exists and legal filings are made, those materials enter a process that does not depend on administrative preference or public commentary. They become part of the foremost system designed to evaluate evidence, interpret law, and determine whether the court or the conduct of the public officials conforms to what constitutional limits are. My responsibility in this situation is straightforward. It's to document what occurred, to preserve the evidence, to articulate the legal questions raised by those events, and to seek review through the courts when those questions are not resolved administratively. That responsibility is the part of an investigative journalism and the part of civics accountability. It does not depend on popularity, and it does not change because the reaction is hostile or dismissive. The obligation is to document is the same whether it's reactive, whether the reaction is supportive of me, indifferent, or openly hostile. Right? Close the mechanism. Public reaction will always vary, and usually it's very fickle. Some people will analyze the substance of a dispute, right? Others will respond with mockery, personal attacks, or dismissal. That dynamic is not unique to this situation. It's part of the broader reality of public discourse in the digital age and on social media. But reaction is not adjudication. That's why I don't really care. Like online commentary does not determine constitutional limits. People got, big boots on online. We all do. No one's standing in front of you. A comment section does not substitute for due process. I mean, I get that because people often say things in emails like that concern me. We don't refer to people by color anymore. We don't refer to people by their LGBTQ status or anything like that. Like those things we don't say in emails and we don't write in papers because it's not considered socially acceptable anymore. And, I see that a lot in Ohio. But a comment section does not substitute due process. These doors may close, certain doors may close, crowds may laugh. Comment sections will fill with criticism, speculation, or ridicule. None of those things will determine the outcome of a legal dispute. They may shape public perception, but they don't alter legal framework that governs government conduct. They may shape, public perception, but they don't shape public law. I'm out to make sure the law is being enforced, but this will be case law. I want to point out that Bowles, through the old gun case, could never put Knapp as the lead case person, even though by law he was supposed to because I was the lead complainant. But he wouldn't put it on there at all. But in the end, they put it on there when they finally tried to announce that he supposedly won the gun case. But he hates my name so much that he can't even do the right thing and legally put me in the position of the lead plaintiff when I am. So they just hate me so much that's what they won't do. So again, in this case, there's no other defendants. He has to write my name. Say my name, Val, say my name. Sorry. The only form that determines whether the actions of public officials comply with the law is going to be a court operating within the procedural safeguards established by the Constitution of the United States of America and of Ohio. Documentation endures in ways that reaction doesn't. Video recordings remain preserved. Written reports remain part of the record. Emails, filings, sworn statements become part of the documented timeline that can be reviewed, analyzed, and tested against applicable law. Court records endure as well. Once a matter enters the judicial system, it becomes part of a structured process in which arguments are evaluated based on the evidence, actually. Statutory authority, constitutional principles, process endures. The procedural safeguards embedded in American law exist specifically to address conflicts between individuals and government authority. Period. Our forefathers knew that. There has to be an active way to disagree with your kings and queens. They're meant to ensure that disputes are resolved through evidence and argument rather than through unilateral action or administrative decree like Tim Williams tried to do. When that process is invoked, that focus shifts away from personality and towards structure. It shifts away from rhetoric and towards legal standards. The shift matters because constitutional questions cannot be answered through reaction alone. They require analysis of authority. They examination of the evidence and interpretation of the governing legal framework. Courts exist for that purpose. They exist so that disputes involving rights, access to public institutions, and the limits of government authority are resolved through structured review rather than through a public sentiment or through a chest bump in a hallway and a door slam. The law is not determined by online reaction or by the volume of criticism directed at a particular individual. And it's not determined through evidence. It is determined through evidence, legal argument, and judicial review conducted within that actual framework established by that Constitution of the United States and the Ohio Constitution and the courts that interpret it. That framework's deliberate, procedural, and designed to outlast moments of controversy and all of us. And in that sense, the outcome of this dispute will not be decided by the loudest voices in the comment section or even my loud voice. It'll be decided by the evidence, by the applicable law, by the structured process of judicial review, by the case law that came before it, which 60-40 is on my side. That process is already underway. That record now exists and ultimately will be evaluated within that forum. The liability created, though, for police officers, that's another dimension of this situation that deserves serious attention as we close up, because in the position it places law enforcement officers like Tim Thompson, who are asked to enforce an administrative decision that has not been adjudicated in court. When an executive office within a municipality issues an indefinite exclusion from public property and directs police to enforce that exclusion under threat of arrest, that practical burden of enforcement falls on the officers standing in the hallway. Not the administrators who wrote the letter, not Tim Williams, not Mayor Bradley, not Ray Carrion. It falls on the chief and all the officers standing there beside him. Police officers are trained to enforce criminal law. Their authority is to detain or arrest generally depends on probable cause that criminal offense has been committed. When enforcement is grounded in a criminal statute, such as trespass law under Ohio laws, ORC as they so hate to call, officers normally rely on that specific and clear predicate. Either a person has unlawfully entered property where they're not privileged to be, or they have refused to leave after lawful notice from someone with authority over the premises is given. What complicates the situation is the nature of the property involved. City Hall is not some private residence. It's not a commercial building open to the invitation only, right? It's not Walmart. It's a public building maintained by taxpayers and used for public meetings and government functions. Access to such spaces intersects with constitutional protections, particularly with the First Amendment right to attend and observe public meetings and the 14th Amendment guaranteed a procedural due process. Now, when administrative exclusion is issued without prior adjudication, the police are instructed to enforce it. If the officers placed in that position must rely on the assumption that the directive is legally valid. If the underlying directive is later found to violate constitutional protections, the legal consequences do not remain confined to the administrative office that created the directive. They can extend to those who enforce them under color of law. And that's why I made clear to state in the doorway to all of them, you're violating my rights, it's under color of law. Federal civil rights litigation under 42 U.S.C. 1983 exists precisely for those situations in which a government official acting under color of law, under state law, deprives a person of rights secured by the Constitution. Courts have repeatedly held that enforcement of policies or directives that infringe on constitutional rights can impose government actors and their employers to liability. While doctrines such as qualified immunity may apply in certain circumstances, like you can kill somebody and get away with it, but that protection is not absolute, particularly when it comes to this. They're very particular about these constitutional principles involved, and they're clearly established. That's why administrative decisions that affect constitutional rights are normally structured with procedural safeguards. Hearings occur, written findings are issued, clear standards are articulated. The goal of those safeguards is not to simply protect the citizens. They also protect the officers, the employees, and anyone who would be asked to enforce directives that might later be deemed unlawful. So an administration and Mr. Tim Williams creates an indefinite exclusion from public property without a prior hearing, without defined neutral standards, and without adjudication, and he sends a police officer to deliver it, it creates a risk not only for the guy delivering it, but for the municipality, but for everyone, all the officers who must implement the order in real time. The officer on the scene does not control the legality of the directive, yet the officer on the scene is the one whose actions may later be scrutinized in litigation. It's not abstract, folks. The entire purpose of constitutional litigation is to test the legality of government conduct through the evidence and judicial process. When a case proceeds through the process, the focus inevitably turns to the chain of decisions that produce the enforcement action. That chain includes the administrators who issued the directives, the policies they relied upon, and the officers who carried out the enforcement. Tim Thompson, Tim Williams, Chief Fowling, the other officers present, Mayor Bradley. It's important to be clear about what this means in practical terms. The liability risk here was not created by me, the one who challenged the exclusion. It was created by the administrative decision to impose and enforce an indefinite ban upon the legality, or before any legality of that decision was tested in court. Once enforcement occurs under color of law, the question of whether constitutional rights were infringed becomes a legal matter that the courts must evaluate. I'm not seeking a plea agreement. I'm not negotiating access in exchange for silence. It's not a matter that will be resolved by informal compromise or administrative convenience. The constitutional questions raised here are structural. They deserve to be addressed through a judicial system. And if that process requires appellate review, it will occur. If it requires review by the Supreme Court of Ohio, that path exists within the structure of the legal system. Constitutional questions frequently travel through multiple levels of court before they are definitively resolved. That's not unusual. It's how precedent is formed. The officers placed in that position of enforcing this directive did not create the policy that produced it. The decision was made by an administrative level. But once enforcement began, the matter entered the realm of constitutional law and civil rights, folks. And it's with liability. At this point, the ultimate arbiter is not the administration that issued the directive, nor the crowd that reacts to it. The arbiter is the court system. And the process has already begun. So, guys, thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm glad I didn't get arrested. I mean, I get it. You guys may not like the way I speak, but it's constitutionally protected speech. And multiple court cases back me up on this. The fact that the city had all this time to prepare, they knew about it, they wrote about it, they even were interviewed about it. And the paper knew about, I'd appealed it. Everyone knew. I posted it online, I sent it to all of them. So for them to act ignorant now, not like they don't know, we don't have an argument. That's it. Bulls, you have no argument in this one. Like, you guys lost. You banned me from all municipal property without actually going and getting due process. I mean, honestly, it'd be a lot easier if Judge Cannon just refuses this one and the appellate court does too. That way I can go all the way to the Supreme Court right off the bat with the smaller, easier pleading case rather than having to wait for a very hard one to go up there. Because one way or the other, we're going to get this tested in the court of the way of the law because you guys aren't doing the right thing. And there's very few decisions specifically in Ohio about this right now with monetary gains, whereas there's plenty across the United States. So I think it's time Ohio got a few more. So, guys, I appreciate you tuning in tonight. It's been a long one. It's been 2 hours and 30 some odd minutes. We shared a lot of videos. We shared a lot of fun. We shared a lot of information. I hope you appreciate it as much as I did. I really do appreciate you tuning in. I just don't understand how this could be happening in my America. I don't understand how, somebody that served their country honorably, who respects the Constitution, can stand back and watch a law department go after a sitting councilwoman and say you're not going to get any protection if you don't stop talking to them. To hear that same councilwoman say that a sitting council person was going after a citizen, just horrible. And I've got other videos of that same person saying all kinds of weird, really rude things to people. Some people I won't share. I mean, I have one that's on phone where he's arguing up a storm with Mitch Fallis back when they were on before, yelling and cursing to each other. But okay, I'm the bad guy. You let Tia come in and curse up a storm, but I'm the bad guy. That's the problem. It's viewpoint restricted. So with that, I will say and bid you adieu. I thank you guys for tuning in tonight. This has been Aaron Knapp. This has been an episode of Unplugged with Aaron Knapp, and we are Knapp Media LLC. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time. Law enforcement, be lawful, not awful, and the rest of you, stay safe out there.